Yo, what's up? Hello, everybody, and welcome to Qualifier 2 of the Element Fusion Squad Tournament. And this one actually going to be, brought to us, sponsored, and helped out with, got some funding and some help from Proletariat. So we're super happy to be working with them. Happy to be putting on a show. And of course, my name is Crashy. With me, I have OSK. How you doing today, buddy?
Dude, I'm doing fantastic. We got our beautiful sponsor, like you were saying, by Proletarian. I think the word you were looking for is finally supported. So we have
Yes,
a very,
supported.
very big, yes, a very, very big cash prize for us. 1740 across the board. We have 240 for the qualifiers and also 1500 for the finals. It's going to be pretty great. You know, the first place team that finishes today is going to get a total of $30. So that's 10 per person, and it's just a little icing on the cake until we get off the finals. When that's the biggest prize pool we've ever had. So thank you so much, Proletariat, for giving us that opportunity. We're going to have 10 teams here for the qualifier. And we're, of course, we can pretty much well imagine that the top team in each qualifier is going to make it to finals, but we are only taking 10 out of 8 qualifiers. That's a lot of room to cover, and the spots are very limited. So we're going to have to see who's willing to step up and really get their game going for today's event. Now, something we saw yesterday, of course, we saw Team UT face roll the lobby, but we do have a few other squads here today, and one of the squads from yesterday is actually getting a second chance in this one. We had our 4th place finisher, Troll Equity, is going to be in this one, along with a few favorites like Team Haunt that you might remember from pre-alpha, and also we have Dirty Mike with Mike Ozowski. We have Go Big or Go Gnome with the roaming gnome coming out, of course. And lots of talented players today. Crashy, what are you most excited to see here from some of our competitors' builds that are coming out now that we have those new talents?
It's always interesting to see if and when a team will pull out Foresight. That one is just like I'm still like discovering its place in the meta. I think everybody's still kind of discovering if there is some pretty good application for that, because it comes at the cost. The cost of technically just being a weaker battle mage in a sense in terms of fighting. So we'll have to see how people are loading out around that talent. Again, that's just like a personal curiosity for me. I really want to see where that falls in line with everything. But yeah, there's so many good builds out now. I mean, things have definitely changed up. And now, we're past Twitch Rivals, we're past Qualifier 1. This is where, like, even though there's been scrims going on, this is where the meta kind of starts to set. You know what I mean? It starts to settle in. We're starting to see where people are becoming more comfortable. Maybe we see some changes, from qualifier to qualifier, depending on the different teams. But one thing I'm specifically excited to see today is just much more of a, how else do I say it other than maybe a more even playing field in today's qualifier. I think that's going to be really interesting to just watch all the teams really battling it out. And again, like you said, we have very limited space. So we're going to see who is really trying to make a good performance and rise to the top in this qualifier.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I'm expecting big performances from Team Haunt, of course. They've been in the business for a long time. I'm also expecting a lot from Woghart's Wizards that are in here. You got to switch up those first 2 letters for Hogwarts Wizards. We have that team out here. We also have, of course, like I mentioned, Dirty Mike. I'm expecting some big things from all those teams. Now, one thing I do want to mention is that going into all these squads, we were seeing a lot of this core of Stone Shaper, Toxicologist, and Conduit. Of course, we do have the class lock, so each one has to pick a different they have to pick a different class. So we're seeing a lot of 2 frontline, 1 backline. Now, the Toxicologist is kind of this hybrid where you can kind of dart in and out of action and sort of catch people that are out of position. But Stone Shaper is always holding the front line until Conduit has to back them up and rotate out. So I'm very interested to see if anybody's going to be picking up the Pyromancer. We did see a little bit of Tempest in the later part. Not a whole lot of Frostborn, though. So we'll have to see how the philosophy of each of these teams kind of folds out here in today's games.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see like the subjectivity of like certain players and their play styles that gets put into like a team scenario, because you see players like like someone like Diego Contra, for example, who is just really full on mains Frostborn, but they find a good way to make that work. Like they're a pretty solid team whenever they come out, and so you could see a little bit of that. So as far as like meta defining team compositions and things like that, there's going to be a nice little variety. But man, you just bringing up like Toxicologist and like how it kind of just fills this role. There's like a little ebb and flow to the class in terms of trios, or like these 3v3 fights that break out. I saw what had to have been one of the most ridiculous clips coming out from Kamsky yesterday, popping all the knowledge potions. And I want to say he had like 4 or 6 shadow steps, and he was just outbreaking after outbreak. And it's just, oh man, a role like that, being able to even just have that strategy to take, like, hey, listen, hey, we've gotten some knowledge potions, let's make sure we feed it to the right person, let's make sure we use it at a very pivotal moment, use it in the right fight whenever it's really going to score us a bunch of points, a bunch of placement, something like that. That's just one little step in the meta, one little step of how do you choose to take those resources that you've gathered throughout the course of the game and make a big play out of it.
Absolutely. And that's a big point that you bring up here. We didn't see a whole lot of finders keepers after the changes. You can find those extra potions out of chests, but we aren't seeing a whole lot of that going into squads. And we kind of saw it towards the latter end, towards game number 7 and game number 8. People are trying to really hoard those knowledge potions, but we didn't see it a whole lot in the beginning area. So maybe you'll start to run it on your Stone Shaper. You can do Vigor, finders keepers, and recovery. We've been seeing a lot of that in scrims. But really yesterday between the top teams, we've been seeing a lot of 2-2-2. The return of old fashioned here. We have runic fluency, scavenging, and recovery. It's interesting to see scavenging in general going into a squad environment where it's much harder to finish out those exiles. But of course, the team that was running it was very confident in sealing everything out. So we'll have to see how these teams adjust to the different game mode. We're used to playing solos and Clash, and now we're on squads. So it's going to be very interesting to see if we see any finders keepers funneling as far as opening chests and funneling knowledge potions to the right person, as you're mentioning now. And one other quick thing to note is that we're seeing a ton of conduit. And I think that's one thing that players are really looking to see like changed in this past patch, but it's untouched. And we're seeing a lot of backline, sort of that reliable damage that you can lay down to seal out exiles while your opponent is trying to escape. So any other classes that we'll be looking out for to take on certain roles, just such as that?
It's always interesting for me specifically to see where the Tempest class kind of falls into squads. I feel like it's, and maybe I'm misspeaking or just misremembering, but I feel like it's a class that I don't see a ton of. And
no, you're correct.
The cool thing about Tempest, though, is that like if you do find like a strategy or even just like a fighting synergy style of play that a single team can play around their Tempest. One thing that I've actually even heard, and I know this sounds silly, but I think I remember hearing someone like Evil Toaster say it whenever they were preparing for Rivals, was like, oh, the funny thing about Tempest is like they in a way kind of take on like an aggro like tank role. And I don't mean that from like a literal standpoint, but it's more so like they have the visual aggro. Like they are taking a lot of that focus. And so I've always been kind of interested because, like a while back, before patch 1.2, I was playing like Harmony, scavenging Tempest builds. I've always kind of wondered like how much a player could get away with running like a Vigor recovery build on a Tempest with dexterity and just really kind of like bouncing around the field and seeing what kind of focus and kind of damage and synergy in a fight they could bring. But I don't know. It's just a thought. My theory crafting mind's kind of running away with me here on this one a little bit. But I've always like kind of been curious about something like that.
Yeah, I think a lot of players are going just the absolute dodge tank route. I'll play a game, you might have heard me mention it before. I play a game called Xenoblade Chronicles, and one of the big staples of that one is having what's called a dodge tank, where you just increase someone's agility to such a level that they never get hit and they're always taking aggro. And I think that's kind of the role that Tempest is going to be playing. Now that we have more impulses on your wind jumps from full release, we have a lot of players taking the runic fluency, fervor, and also escapist route. Yeah, so there's a lot of movement in all of that. The only class that could really get a beat on them is Conduit, which we're seeing a lot of. But if you can run that Tempest so well to where you can run out of everyone's way, take a dash rune and really vary up your movement, then that's something to really keep in mind, like you were mentioning. But getting right into it, it looks like we're going to get on to our retry of troll equity here, rocking the Frostborn, Toxicologist, and Conduit in Dustpole. Not really finding much action, but finding a lot of loot. And now we're getting right on to Brown Nipple. He's getting right down as the rest of his team needs to rotate in, but they are down as well. One more to go.
Yeah, and unfortunately for Brown Nipple, he does go down. But one thing I do see is there is a foresight in that loadout. Unfortunately, they're not going to be able to use that as they're going to fall. but it's all this like early game fight for a little bit of control. And look at this, you know, you brought up the 2-2-2 build, and one thing I was going to take a second to talk about it, but we kind of just got flowing, is fortitude. You know, now being cut down from 3 points down to 2, it's definitely something to kind of look at, and it's something that I feel like I saw Marcus aka Apostle running it in Twitch Rivals, and I was really interested in the specific way that it was being used in that event, because he, you know, was playing I believe he was playing Toxicologist with, you know, offhand frost, and he was kind of like using that as a way to peek for shots and then, you know, be a little bit safe. But look at this fight already breaking out. Shazzy's going to be so low. His teammate Bolt kills TV, going to take a lot of damage as well. That's Starzizer finding 2 disruptions and only 1 player left alive, and that is going to be a triple kill coming out from Starzizer very, very quick. I mean, that fight just unfolded very, very fast in front of our eyes there.
Yeah, very, very nicely done by Team A-Town Hood, making themselves known out here. 4 exiles onto Starzizer, meaning that he definitely got a piece of the action from the other party that was involved. And just look at all that loot. He is on the Pyromancer, one of the stronger classes that we're seeing come out, and opting to run the Harmony build as opposed to Vigor on Pyromancer. And that's something that I've been vocal about going into this next patch. Everyone's saying, oh, Vigor, you have 150 health, you're able to build off their recovery a lot more effectively, but there's a big thing that Harmony brings with that, and that is CC immunity. There's no stuns, there's no slows, and there's no freezes. And I think in a squad environment, there's going to be a lot of that, especially from Frostborns that like to use Tundra a lot, Conduits that like to use Lightning Strike a lot. And not only that, but it also tanks a percentage of that damage, which ends up being not that much health difference between Vigor and Harmony. I mean, effective health in that way. So Starzizer are definitely looking to play the front line here instead of the Stone Shaper. He's on the Pyromancer, and we still have that Toxicologist hybrid. So it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds for him here in the future, opting to run the Dexterity of all things as opposed to Finders Keepers. So we'll see how that plays out for him. I would have liked to see a little bit more Finders Keepers to get the knowledge potions a little bit better funneled in, but we're going to hop right over to Dirty Mike and the boys over here with BNAG, Mike Wazowski, and King Ryzen. Looks like stunning someone already, rocking the full long-range build and laying down some fire right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And you see BNAG on that conduit is kind of keeping himself high up to now. He has all these charges. Am I to assume this is a knowledge potion potentially popped a little bit early on, looking for some of these floating shots if he can get it off that flight tech, just kind of like using a little pop shot for himself. Look at that, the conduit damage is coming out. BNAG going to find that first disruption, now laying down the lightning strike and just looking to peel back over for his teammates, and so much consistent damage coming out from those lightning bolts as BNAG looking to find the second, now just chasing up a little bit with that flight. Again, that kind of like pop flight tech. Not really sure what to name that, but that's going to be a quick triple kill coming out, little team wipe coming out from the side of BNAG and King Ryzen, as they're going to go ahead and just get the leftover loot, the little bit of the scraps that are left around. And man, those lightning bolts, the potential energy, so strong off drop. You know, especially in a team environment where you're not like, you know, you're not 1v1ing as a conduit. It's just so much freedom to lay out some of that damage.
Yeah, it really is. There's a ton of damage that can be had, especially running the focus mana build that we see all the time. You're just able to lay down that power surge in later levels and just have that infinite mana pool to constantly charge that focus mana. So that's definitely something to be looking out for in the late game here, and great job from BNAG to make such great use of it there early on as well. And you can see his loot. It's mostly purple. Needs a purple amulet to finish it out. Of course, we'd love to see some legendary pieces, but he's looking pretty good. Now, in terms of what to call that flight dash, that's what I end up calling it. It's a flight dash. Yeah. It's not very creative, though, so we'll have to get back to it. But we see Cozy already in the action here, along with KDA and Speary, going to go ahead and defend off the southern part of this Halcyon village area. And it looks like they actually have a very good position right here. They do have a nice tower that they can defend from. And Cozy rocking the Frost, definitely able to land a bit of long-range pressure. And Speary and KDA looking to play the 2 frontliners here, as it looks like no conduit for their troubles here. They will have to go ahead and disrupt this fortitude in the most efficient way as possible, but it doesn't look like they'll be able to do it very quickly. Cozy going to be rotating around this tower along with Speary. Looks like we have a little bit of ambidextrous coming out with that Frostborn. Maybe I'm misseeing that, but they are just slapping away, saying, hey, this is a gentleman's brawl, and it's getting interrupted by the rest of his teammates here.
Yeah, and that's, speaking of interrupted, that first disruption going to be coming out from Speary. Now Rush Frog potentially entering the fight somewhere else on the map, maybe in the same position, but look at this. Cozy goes in, finds a big, I would say a fight-defining disruption here, as now it looks like the last 2v1 is going to go down, and that's going to be a final elimination there. That Exile coming out, that's a full-on team wipe, and here we are. That's going to be Team Haunt, Rush Frog, Cloud, and Death just looking to, it looks like, secure the final bit of this fight if they can find this final knock. Looks like, oh, maybe one more, as that's going to be Sputnik going down, and Hermias Mora is getting a couple kills in that kill feed as well. So Death's going to go ahead and take it a little bit slow, pop this big shard potion. He's got his teammates flying all around the battlefield, and he can just kind of inch his way back in, find some support. You can see some of those spirit orbs, you know, they're all down. They're just hoping their teammate can clutch. But again, this is a very veteran team. Cloud finds the third. That's going to be the Roaming Gnome, Sputnik, and Blizz have been exiled.
Yeah, it looks like go big or go gnome is going gnome today, as Cloud is just laying down the fire all day. Interesting that he'd call himself Cloud and then run the conduit. That's a little bit disrespectful in my estimation, but in any case, this team of Haunt is probably one of the more stacked teams you'll see throughout this whole tournament, actually. Coming out in Qualifier 2 already. We saw Death on Friday while we were practicing some casting with myself, Play Safe, and Mana Class. Death was absolutely tearing up the lobby, and he runs an interesting build. He's rocking that full movement build that's not on a Tempest, it's on a Toxicologist. And one of the things that you'll have to look out for, they're already funneling all of those knowledge potions. You can see all the charges on his Frost Gauntlet there. He's got 5 in the sorcery already stacked up. And one of the things he likes to do is he likes to dart straight in, lay down a few outbreaks, and then dart right back out and let his team follow up. So we'll have to keep an eye on that, and he'll be keeping the high movement up. He's been just tearing up the scrim lobbies. But now we see Speary and KDA back at it with Cozy rocking the Dragonfire Tornado there. Not going to quite land anything. The Fortitude will stay up until that lightning hits them, and it looks like they're in a bit of a fight over this house here, and I think whoever does take the house is going to end up taking this fight. What do you think, Crashy?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great positioning. They're not in the zone. That zone is going to be moving here very soon. But to bring in a point that you made earlier, this is going to be an ambidextrous build that we are seeing on Speary. It's going to be that Spellslinger, Fortitude, Ambi. So 1, 2, 3, nice little clean, order of operations in terms of those talents. And this is unique. This is something that I haven't seen a lot of in competitive. It's something that is going to take a little bit of discovery for the players to master and really put in the time to find themselves as a player, find that play style. And then not only that, they have to work that into a squad's environment. So we'll be checking back in with that. But now Steel Mets, it looks like they might be looking to disengage, head over to Avantgarde Summit. So they may be not in the best position here to take this fight.
Yeah, it looks like Steel Mets is getting focused down quite a bit, and they're actually being closed out of Avantgarde. So he will need to go ahead and take the reset, but he's being followed up on very quickly by Cloud. I don't know here, but he is going to go ahead and get frozen up. A little bit of counter freeze coming out. Now, Cloud would really love to go ahead and thirst this Exile here. He doesn't want to give them any chance to get all 3 of them back up. Now, I think if they can take out the rest of the 2 of their teammates, which I do believe they can, that'll be a much better situation for them. But Steel Met's doing a great job of pathing away from the fight in general. It will be a little bit difficult for people to get to him, though. As I say that, Solar Bear swooping right in, hopefully not seen by the rest of this team. And it looks like they will get back up to all 3. Now we have Dirty Mike and the boys going right up here in this southern tower here, just on the outside of Halcyon, and fighting over this northern tower. I do believe that's where most of the enemy forces are going to go be trained up on, and we're just waiting for some outbreak slaps. There's one of them, there's 2, and here comes the invisibility, able to just sneak his way around, getting pounded by the Stone Shaper, but instantly slapped is game in Canada. And now Mike will just be kind of rotating around. I wonder if he's going to go ahead and take a little bit of a reset, but it looks like he's saying no. I'm all offensive today. I'm going to go ahead and try to get as many slaps as I can. Rotating right around. Got to be careful for that Stone Shaper there. Oh, what a nice slap. Never mind. That is going to be the end of Team 50 Gold. They are out of it. And now we see Mike Wazowski taking on a bit of a third party here, looking for that one final Exile to finish it out.
Yeah, and it's funny because I was watching the kill feed just prior to, this perspective change that we got, and Wonderful had actually picked up a couple kills or at least a couple disruptions. And so what it seems like is that maybe the Dirty Mike squad had like kind of third-partied in on this fight, but in any case, they were able to clean that up. We are seeing this invis rune, and I don't know if that's by design. Maybe he wants to have that for the outbreak potential and for the potential to just stay alive. But look at this. This is Haunt coming in fast. That's going to be BNAG getting disrupted by death. Rush Fox finds the second on the King Ryzen. The last member standing is going to be Mike Wazowski, unfortunately not standing for long, as this is the Haunt squad, #1 team, most likely going to be in this heat, just based on their accolades in the past. But look at this. They're just trying to get death up. He was actually disrupted in that fight. This team is going to be looking to dominate, and definitely going to be a team that we have on our radar because they are just flying through this game, #1.
Yeah, and it's very good that they picked up Death there so quickly. Death is probably the most prolific player on their team, as I did mention. Of course, not to say anything bad about Rush Frog or Cloud, but you can see the builds here. We do have Rush Frog on the full front line, the Vigor, the Recovery, and also Finders Keepers here. Definitely funneling everything they can into Death, as I would imagine here. That's one of the things we talked about getting right in. Of course, Pyromancer, one of the strongest classes that we can think about in the current meta here. And look at this. We have a Thirst coming out. Speary is playing for placement here, getting the Thirst off, and he'll just be the lone player left for team. If I can find their name on my list here. I'm being a little bit slow here. I'll have to get back to it. But anyway, Heathens. Thank you, Mr. Production Man. He'll just be hiding, playing for placement, and there's really only one other solo team that we're looking for, and so far. Looks like they have pinged it out. They'll be rotating off towards the lower part of those rocks, but they really don't have to move. They can hold this all day and just let the zone close right in on them.
Yeah, and this is the battle of the second place, right? I mean, because we already can clearly tell who is going to be the winner of game #1, but what player is going to be able to stay alive? Unfortunately, Speary is going to go down, so he's going to find himself a third-place finish for his squad, and the last player remaining, Hermias Mora, is going to fall at the hands of Rush Frog, so that's going to be Team Haunt taking game #1 here in the Qualifier 2.
Yes, and that's a very big statement early on. That's exactly what I predicted, actually. I think Haunt's going to have a very good day today, but it was very good by Speary and the rest of them to go ahead and just play for placement as much as they could. Even though you don't have a full squad, you can't really take any fights head on, but you can at least hide and try to get by that way. Now, of course, the Fortitude not being his friend there, it's bright as day. Might as well hang a chandelier above your head and just let the enemy see you that way. But I will go ahead and point out we do have 8 games here, so plenty of chances to come back, and we'll be taking the best 6 out of 8, something we didn't explain there in the beginning. So again, plenty of chances to go ahead and play this out, get you a better placement, and hopefully if you do better in 6 of those 8 games, then we can just drop the bad performances.
Yeah, and one thing to say about the Heathens is at one point they were all alive. They were kind of kicking around. They were doing their thing. They had won a fight. And next thing you know, we kind of bounced over. We saw the Haunt fight versus Dirty Mike and the boys. And when we jumped back, it was like Speary was just the last one alive. So some kind of a crazy fight went down. We didn't quite get to see how it happened, but it had to have been just back-to-back trades between those teammates. So unfortunately, Speary was the last one standing in that roster there. But hey, he picks up a 3rd place for the team. They obviously were able to scrap a little bit in that game, get themselves some damage and some eliminations, some exiles. So couldn't have been a terrible performance, but we'll see how they decide to take that one into the next couple of games, next handful of games. But again, I'm very curious how that ambidextrous build is working out. Like, is there a lot of value in that in squads? Like, is the gauntlet swapping with Spellslinger something that he's really like going to get a full utilization out of? Hard to say, but we'll definitely be taking a look at it, right?
Yeah, and it's very interesting that he chooses to run a Fortitude of all things with it on Tempest. It's one of the more floaty classes that you can imagine. It's going to be the one that's really, playing that front line as a dodge tank that we usually see. And it's just one of those things where I don't really know if you want to run Fortitude on it, because we have a lot of players out here rocking Toxicologist along with Lightning. And those 2 things are really easy to go ahead and tag that Fortitude off. So you just wasted a lot of value on it. So we'll be seeing if he switches up his talents. It's very interesting to see, of course, not something we've really ever seen before. So we'll have to keep an eye on that for Speary there. But one thing to note is that we do have Troll Equity here finishing out second on those placements. That was the last solo that ended up going away. So very, very nice to see them have a bit of a better showing. They did, if I remember correctly, sub out a player in the middle of qualifier #1. So they'll be playing with their full first first pick team of Steel Mets from Mora and Solar Bear. Solar Bear was the sub from yesterday. So we'll see now that we have them on the first 4 games this time, if they do any better. It looks like they are so far. Second place, like I said, is their placement. And the Heathens just making it up in the 3rd place as well. Now, interesting to note that Dirty Mike actually ended up getting the better part of those points there. They did have a ton of exiles and a ton of damage there, along with their 4th place placement. So that's very, very... that's something a little bit different from Twitch Rivals, where you're coming from, Crashy. There were a lot of people playing for placement, a lot of people playing for cheap exiles, but now we have that damage score in, and I would argue that it is just as important as those other 2 categories.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that was definitely like part of the rhetoric that came out of the end of Rivals is like, hey, you know, that is just one format. That's one way that you're going to see competitive Spellbreak be played. But the majority of like the community events, element events, things that have been going on in Spellbreak have been very focused on fighting. And that's why, you know, even myself, like coming from that broadcast, it's very like fun to talk about the fact that, you know, there's really not a ton of camping in a game like this, not only be like by design in terms of like what kind of cover you can find, but at the end of the day, in this format right here, you're not going to get enough, especially when we're only taking 10 teams. You know, you're really just not going to get enough by not being somewhat of an aggressor, not having some kind of, you know, the word that I love to use often, and people probably know by me from now, is conviction. You have to fight with conviction. You have to make solid decisions. You have to have a very strong shot caller to make that choice. And then when you go into those fights, when you win those fights, it has a much bigger payoff than a format that you would see that's very placement heavy, where, yeah, you won the fight. Yeah, you're going to get some exile points, but ultimately everybody's just trying to play for that 10 points off of the win, as opposed to a format like this where you're really just rewarded for overall being great at the game. Like, you can play, you can stay alive, you can get some placement points, but if you're getting damage and exiles on top of that, you're very greatly rewarded for it.
Yeah, it's very good that we have a format like that too, because I would say, at least for me as a caster, it's much more fun to watch that than just a mid-game lull of 24 people going into the last circle myself. Now, of course, I'm sure you folks at home will have a little bit of a different opinion, or maybe agree. Whether you do or not, it's very, very nice to see the early aggression come out. And here we go, getting into game number 2, about to see a little bit more aggression as we have Red Hits already. The last member of the team, the rest of his team, for Team 50 Gold, is already thirsted and exiled, and that is by KDA of the Heathen squad that we saw finish 3rd from last game. So very nice start for them, but Red Hits is just feeling the pressure right now, as he's going to have to play for placement very early on. We'll see how long he lasts in this match as we hop right over to Bolt Kills TV. We'll see how this plays out for him. A little bit of wind spam, just a little bit more damage to go. One slap will do, and it's going to be his teammate that comes in, BudGod.TV, taking out Stoner Moment.
Yeah, and I have to question if that player is playing Stone Shaper, right? Like, surely Stoner Moment 420 is playing Stone Shaper. I couldn't imagine anything else. But yeah, some early scrappy fights. You know how it goes. You're fighting for territory. You're fighting for that positioning. And look at this. I actually didn't even notice this. This may have been the case last game as well. But Bolt Kill's also going to be running an ambidextrous build. So maybe we're going to see more of that. And I actually meant to bring it up. We were talking about Speary's build with the Spellslinger. I wonder where the value comes from when you're playing a Tempest build, and whether or not you could see a 0-3-3 cost build where you're running Fervor and ambidextrous. It's just something that's been on my mind. I've messed around with it in a few games, just obviously playing pubs and things. I wonder if that could have some kind of value, but it really, I think it comes down to Spellslinger and how much value you can get out of that. Speaking of that, look at this. This fight has been third party, turned around, flipped upside down, as it looks like Chazzy is going to be very low. Bolt Kills is getting chased around as well, trying to buy a little bit of time in the sky, has this frost shot that he might be able to take. An Ice Lance not going to be able to connect, but look at this. Chazzy actually finds a disruption as well. So this, the health is different, the totals are low, but they might be good. BudGod is going to find that disruption onto Starzizer. Now it looks like they want to get aggressive. They want to pursue. They have that enemy player is down, and they are just pushing forward. You see BudGod kind of leading the charge, and now Bolt Kills is looking to find that disruption or that exile, finish off that player, but the full team is down. So Starzizer and his squad, unfortunately, are going to go out pretty early in this game, and we're already cut down to 29 players left alive.
Yeah, this early game, a very aggressive one. As you can see from the players' team compositions, we're seeing a lot more of Pyromancer, and the early power that has on the Combust and on Firefly. And now we see Shino just going to go ahead and rotate around Looks like they're holding down Dust Bowl pretty well. We do have one disruption in the front side right here. Not sure if we'll get a follow-up to save his teammate, and it looks like that's a no. Tao will go ahead and thirst Operatic Orca, and we're just kind of rotating out through this early game. We do see quite a bit of damage builds coming out, and of course the sheer tank that we love to see all the time. And now look at this. They have all of Dust Bowl to go ahead and loot, barring there being another team in here. And you're seeing a lot of this Stone Shaper Wind build. It's something popularized by Darkbreakers himself, of course. We've been seeing that a lot from him coming from the solo side of things. And it looks like a lot of teams are actually opting to go ahead and take it. So we'll trade out the Spring Step for invisibility, and we'll go ahead and loot right back up as we get into some more action here. Looks like we see a red ping out there. That might be a little bit of action, or it might just be a miss ping. We'll have to see.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, just to talk about this build a little bit, or just the talent changes coming out from patch 1.2 in general, that change to Fervor has changed where you pull that value from. Now, I mean, a build like this specifically, the former 2-2-2 build has now dropped recovery for Escapist to become a 2-3-1 build. And this is going to be Haunt taking an early fight here at Ruby, and this is, coming in from the backside of that early fight we saw from Bud God and his squad, but they're playing a little bit safe. The zone is on the way, but they're deciding to take this slow. They're getting some of that chip damage, and something like Conduit, this is another thing that maybe doesn't get a lot of dialogue surrounding it. They're going to go ahead and rotate into the zone, but one thing about Conduit or the Lightning Gauntlet in general with Lightning Bolts is that you can gain a lot of information just by tapping your enemy. If you want to know how low they are, how much shields they're rocking, what kind of belt they have, all getting one lightning bolt hit is going to give you so much information. But it looks like the pressure actually might be coming in the way, coming from an enemy team looking to progress and get a little bit of aggression onto Haunt. So they're still rotating, kind of getting a small reset here. But these guys know how to fight, and if this is the position that they want to be in, you have to imagine that they're just buying some time. But look at that. That's going to be a big Ice Lance landed onto Cloud. So now Death and Rushfrog might have to take some kind of a forward position. It does look like Cloud is getting focused. Death finds a very quick disruption on the Chazzy. That's exactly what I thought it was going to be. These two teams coming together very quickly. So we're still holding the perspective of Cloud, and Death is just on a tear right now. 1, 2, and 3. All 3 of those players going to go down at the hands of Death.
Wow, and I think you really want that one back. As we saw at the beginning, Cloud actually got double sniped by 2 Frost Gauntlets, and it's really something that you would just like to see a little bit differently. I mean, maybe it's just good comms on Haunt's side, or maybe it's just a lack of follow-up. Either way, not getting Cloud down very quickly is really going to be the main factor in that fight, because really Death and Rushfrog were able to 2v3 that most of the time, and it's going to be a little bit of a different feel if you can get around that next time. Now we're going to see You Are My Clarity going to go ahead and rotate around this little building here. The houses are doing a great job of keeping our enemy player quarantined over here, and he's actually just gone. He has up and disappeared, and now here we go, the follow-up. There's the lightning strike, and he's already going to be disrupted by the Puffy Penguin. Now we're just looking for a cheeky boulder by You Are My Clarity. Going to hop right in on that tankier build right there, but he's actually going to opt for the lightning along with his friend Rama Rapparoo, I guess is what you'll say here. But we do see the third party coming out. Tao will go ahead and take him down. Death, you can see in the kill feed, is already doing some work onto the Mr. Subtronic and Ballinks, and now they got to be feeling real good with all that legendary gear.
Oh yeah, I mean, they're just stomping through the map right now, and this game feels a little hot and heavy, a little fast and loose to me, as it just seems like every team is like looking to scrap. And that's actually one thing that I love about Spellbreak is that we really do see a lot of other battle royales, especially in competitive, come down to this scenario where at the highest level of play, it's more often than not just better and more beneficial to you to avoid a fight, to stay away from people. And I think that has like an innate correlation to what battle royale is as a game mode. And so you're going to see that to a certain degree where the highest level of play, the smartest players are going to be making decisions based on building a trajectory for a win, but in a format that kind of combats that issue with battle royale, for lack of a better word. That's when you see a lot of this heavy mobility from a game like Spellbreak really shine. And that's what I love about the whole combination between a format like this and a game like this and a genre like this being the battle royale game mode that really comes together in kind of a very unique way.
Yeah, definitely. A lot more aggression being stemmed from Spellbreak than I would say from other games such as like PUBG, Fortnite. Maybe Fortnite's a little bit different. I'm not really that experienced with it, but as far as I can tell, usually there's a lot of cover involved, whereas in Spellbreak, there is very little in terms of cover that you can really get away with. And there's more about movement and dodging the opponent's spells and really outplaying them through heightened positioning than anything else. But as we can see, on to Blitz, Sputnik, and Roaming Gnome being Go Gnome or Go Home. Or rather, Go Big or Go Gnome. I'm getting all these team names confused here. Looks like they're going to go ahead and take control of the northeastern side of the zone here. It is going to be centering right around Verdant Estate, that beautiful maze that we love to see. Well, that brings memories back, actually, of the Spellbreak Olympics that we had that one time of Stone Shapers in the maze, and that was definitely something for the ears to experience there. But now we see them rotating up towards this tower here. It'll be interesting to see if they go ahead and try to hold down this area. It looks like Blitz is going to go ahead and ping off the maze here, maybe outlining his next enemy. Going to go ahead and pop the Fortitude there, and now they are in the middle of sort of a long-range engagement here. I can see the Frost trying to be lined up. We see Blitz on some jumping shots. And honestly, I don't think there's really much that's going to be going on here. I would keep my attention towards the back of me here, just in case we have some teams going to go ahead and rotate in. And it looks like that's exactly what's going to happen as Roaming Gnome goes ahead and spots it out. Now we're going to have a big fight here in the next little part of these cliffs and sand near the northwestern side of the zone.
Yeah, and I think it's always a heads-up play or just something that you can really pull information from when you see a team that's holding a certain position, but they know the difference between being a pinch team or being the team that's being pinched, and they have to pull themselves backwards. So we're seeing that now. This team wrapping that full edge of the zone creates a situation where they are now becoming the pinch team, and it's going to force a fight for territory, force a fight for some kind of control here. And look at this first player coming in very fast and loose. Blizz is going to put out a lot of damage, but takes some in return. This player, the wind spam coming out right behind him, isn't going to be able to respond. No, that's Rama Rapparu is going to get the disruption. Sputnik finding one on his enemy as well, as it looks like it might be a 2v2 left with 2 players down from each side. We still do have this perspective. Roaming Gnome trying to get a shard off, see if he can find a bit of a reset for himself, as he's going to be getting very low. 1 player left in the hands of Sputnik if Roaming Gnome does go down. Looks like Speary is finding some disruptions, some fights, some eliminations on his side of the map as well. And look at that, Sputnik going down very quick. The Roaming Gnome has been in constant pursuit of a reset, as he's going to be the last member left alive for his team. Go Big or Go Gnome. Looks like going Gnome, Roaming Gnome actually getting a full exile onto 2 of these players. That might be the full fight finish, but Roaming Gnome is not out of the woods yet, as 1 more player might be looking to join this fight. I'm not sure if this is the same team. No, look at that. 2 players coming into frame. Now we know Roaming Gnome 1v2, 1v3 potential. Unfortunately, he's going to go down at the hands of Cloud. So Haunt really sweeping in, finding some extra damage, extra exile points, and really just taking control there. There's only 7 players left alive after all of that action that happened in various parts of the map all at once.
Yeah, and the zone's really locking down very quickly. They'll have to go ahead and switch on over to this grassy area, as this might be a solo here. Actually, I'll have to see what kind of outfit they're wearing, as yes, it is red hits. He did end up making it to the 3rd placement. Look at that determination and perseverance. You know his team was out very, very early on, and he's able to make it to 3rd place. That is very impressive, as now looks like it'll be Team Haunt versus Team The Heathens, as we are looking at some very high place teams here, very consistent in their placements. And now we see Cozy just trying to wrap around, get a little bit of damage off here. His Cloud will go ahead and be burned off, but no Dragonfire damage onto him just yet. He is going to go ahead and be swamped out by 2 players, but he ends up getting the cheeky exile into death, the more prolific player on Team Haunt. And now it looks like a 2v2. We are dead even in this matchup, as he's going to go ahead and rotate around this tower, looking for that reset, looking for that small armor potion, as his recovery is fully charged up, waiting on the Fortitude to come up, and it is right here. And now Cozy can go ahead and back up KDA here, as he is getting his opponent very low. There's another exile, and this might be the end of Team Haunt.
Yeah, some quick damage, quick moves coming out from Cozy, just very fast and loose, finding the opportunity to dip and dive in and out. Uses a couple of shadow steps, now trying to find the 3rd. He's in full pursuit against this enemy player. Cozy is low. Maybe he'll go ahead and back it up, take a little bit slow. He does have 1 charge of shadow step, so we do see that runic fluency getting put to work. I'm not exactly sure what the timer on his Fortitude is, but you have to imagine there's some strength, a little bit of a power spike coming his way. And look at that, KDA, Cozy. They're going to be taking out Haunt here in that final fight. It really started off really, really quickly. I think Death kind of dove in, maybe bit off a little bit more than he could chew there, but Cozy played that very well. I mean, he took his time, he was patient, he played in and out of the castle. Ultimately, he found himself the win condition that he was looking for.
Yeah, and you could see on his exile count, he had 5 exiles for the day. So Cozy really putting in some work. And I think that's just a perfect example of a little bit of an overextension on Death's part. We know that he's probably is individually the best player in the lobby. I think we can go ahead and pin that down from game 1 and game 2. But if you're going to go ahead and separate out from your team in the way he did, he kind of got divided between that little corner of the tower. We did end up having Cozy and another teammate just focus down Death, the more dangerous member. And after that, I mean, it's just a clean 2v2 as we saw there. And not only that, but they're able to kind of rotate out, get that last little res on their teammate, making it a clean 3v1. And I mean, there's just really all it is better team play coming out from the Heathens. A nice little upset that you love to see coming out from some of these newer teams that we're less familiar with. But my goodness, they are making themselves known in a big way today.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, one thing that I was particularly looking forward to is just a bit more of an even playing field overall. You know, I think we're going to have some opportunities for teams to have their good games. May not be the best game, may not be, you know, dominating 4, 5, 6 games in a row, but I mean, it's going to be good for them to be able to get some experience and to play against each other in what feels like a more even curve of skill level as opposed to playing against UT in multiple games. I mean, hey man, they're a tough team to get through, but I mean, hey, nonetheless, still an amazing performance coming out from Haunt. You know, Death, I think he found, if I want to recall correctly, like 2 full wipes. I mean, obviously he's not doing it by himself, but in terms of the kill feed, if we're talking montage clips, you know, seeing that death like 3 times real quick in the kill feed, pretty impressive stuff. So definitely getting out there, playing that role and playing the toxicologist class for his team very, very well.
Yeah, as we talked about, it is that sort of hybrid build that we're talking about here. You're able to dart in and out and just land bunches of heavy damage on your team here. It's almost, I know it's kind of a cliche to say it's an assassin class, but it's almost like an assassin class, but also kind of a dodge tank, as we were talking about kind of with Tempest there. And it has a little bit more utility in that invisibility aspect of it. So not only can you just dodge attacks outright, but you can also sneak up on your opponents, get into the back line and really disrupt their own conduit user, as we usually see, or Frostborn if they happen to be running it. So you can see the surgical precision coming out. Unfortunately, just a little bit of a misstep in that last part, as we mentioned. And Cozy was able to counter his misposition very well in his own toxicologist. So going into game 3 here, I would like to just mention that we are starting to see a bit of a shift between game 1 and game 2 already. Some teams are taking a little bit different classes, kind of adjusting to the playing field. So what are some predictions from you, Crashy, that we can see going into game 3 to sort of adjust for some of these teams running the builds that they are?
Oh man, it's hard to say. I'm actually surprised I haven't seen a little bit more, like, I guess, built out frontline Stone Shaper. You know, I don't know how much more effective you can get as opposed to running like the kind of like the Darkbreakers build, which is the Darkbreakers Stone Shaper build, you know, running Fervor and focus mana recovery and having like that offhand win, even if you're not running it with offhand win, but that kind of like focus mana play style on Stone Shaper is really interesting because it's innately DPS focused. It's like you have the quick shockwaves, you have the fast armor regain, you have fast projectiles on whatever your offhand is, but you're not really able to stay in a fight too long. It feels like you don't have the runic fluency to be kind of like fast and loose and to jump around a whole lot, and you're not running some kind of synergistic talent from Mind, whether it be Harmony to make yourself a little bit more tanky or Vigor to make yourself a little bit more tanky. So I'm curious to see like how the Stone Shaper role, and I'm talking about like the overarching meta at this point. I'm really interested to see what eventually becomes the more effective play style from Stone Shaper, because maybe you don't need like a full-on tank, right? Maybe you do just want someone that dives in, does a bunch of damage, and then maybe they get disrupted and your team kind of like takes over the rest of the damage and the rest of the fight. Or maybe you do want that person that can kind of like stand and deliver focus and put out annoying shockwaves, create some gigantic trails of fire, or whatever the case may be. It's really interesting to see. That is a class that I've always personally been interested in. I like to run a lot of Stone Shaper, so I'm particularly looking out for how I'm not only just watching this particular set of players run with the Stone Shaper class, but what the overall Stone Shaper meta kind of develops into over the course of, all of these qualifiers.
Yeah, and it's very interesting that you note that it's not exactly necessary for them to run Stone Shaper at all if they don't want to. I think that this game really allows for a bunch of expression. And if you really want to run Stone Shaper, of course you can. It's a very effective frontline class, able to land lots of damage on multiple players if you can get positioned correctly. But also we're seeing just a lot of different builds that we're not really used to seeing, sort of like Pyromancer coming out, for example, or Tempest if they feel that they are more skilled in that aspect. So we'll see how this kind of develops. As we can see, Rush Frog, of course, running the Pyromancer instead of the Stone Shaper that we normally see. Death still on the Toxicologist, working out pretty well for him. Let's see if they can take a dub here in game number 2. Game number 3 is looking pretty good in terms of loot for them so far.
Oh, man, already some scraps in the kill feed. So you can see Hermia, Samora, Chazzy, Solar Bear, everybody just back and forth going down. That might be a full team wipe. Am I reading that correctly? Or I think they actually secured the exile onto Bud God. So we'll have to see how that develops. But yeah, I mean, one thing you brought up was Rush Frog. Now, Rush Frog's been a player that I've particularly taken some interest into, have watched his stream a bit. Oh, that was a failed Vanishing Mist coming out from Death. He doesn't quite have the talent yet or the skill level yet. That's funny. I just had to bring some note to that. But yeah, Rush Frog, I actually watched him prior to patch 1.2, and he was playing a lot of like the Harmony recovery Stone Shaper build. He also likes to play that same build, that like tankier brawler build on the Pyromancer class as well. And Pyromancer, this is such a well-rounded class in terms of the fact that they can kind of do anything. They're gonna get into the thick of the fight. So I think running like a Harmony recovery build, Harmony Dex recovery build, Harmony Finders Keeper build, or Vigor, for the sake of like subjectivity in terms of how you want to run it, that's definitely something that I think we'll see a little bit more of as well. So if a team does decide to not run Stone Shaper, you may see that frontline Pyromancer playstyle come to kind of like the forefront of the meta potentially as well. I think there, like you said, there is a lot of room to carve out playstyles, to carve out team compositions, and it's not like the Pyromancer class or the Stone Shaper class fills one role. It's like the way that you're doing it with the team comp, with the build that you're creating, and the playstyle that your team is going to have going into fights. And that's just one thing that I love about this game in general. So we do have like this kind of early game lull. Everybody's just fighting for positioning. There's already been about 10 players that have been exiled from the field. Lots of some back and forth trading, but man, like I said, I could go on forever about theory crafting different play styles and fight styles and builds and things of that nature.
Yeah, definitely. Myself included too. I think I could do that for days and hours and hours. It's actually kind of what I do here. Actually, it's all I do. But anyway, that's a very good point that you bring up on Pyromancer, and I think the word you're looking for there is a flex pick, as we see Puffy Penguin going to go ahead and take out Zebra Boy. Not really affiliated with the tournament there, but good exile nonetheless, right there with 2 Xbox players of all things here. So great stuff for him. Getting the console players involved. This is a Fusion tournament. We do have the cross-platform here now on the squads format. So it's great to see all these players get out and really compete with some of the best in the world, as we can see. But going back to your Pyromancer point, yeah, it is one of the more strong flex picks, as now we see one of the more strong players coming out from KDA, landing the beautiful snipe onto his opponent here. He is very, very low. He's going to land one more shot here. No icicle, but great snipes coming out. Oh, just misses that one. That was so close, but his teammate Speary able to clean it up very, very quickly. No other squad members to be seen here, so maybe they are going to leave him for dead, or maybe we'll just have a long-range engagement all day, as KDA is just farming today.
Yeah, in this build, I want to put some of my boomer brain to work here a little bit. Speary finds that next kill, and that's going to be Strofo, as well as the rest of his squad, going to go down. So Speary getting themselves on the board, finding a little bit more damage points, more exile points, and ultimately pushing themselves further in the placements. But I want to put a little focus on this build, because this is an overall 2-2-2 build, but it's run very differently. We're seeing 2-2-2 in terms of runic fluency and fortitude. We're already starting to see fortitude come to that forefront in terms of the second 2 talent that you're going to take, 2 cost talent. But he's actually running Thirsty. Now, he's running Thirsty on Pyromancer, and that's, I feel, a little bit different to me. Pyromancer, usually the class that kind of gets into the thick of things, and maybe that's their thought process. Like, if I'm in the middle of the fight, maybe I take a second to to refresh, and then everybody around me gets that healing as well. But I feel like I usually see that thirsty talent go more towards the backline player. So that'll be interesting to see. I just haven't seen that yet. I think I could be misspeaking or just misremembering again, but I think this might be the first time that I've actually seen thirsty being played on a Pyromancer for quite some time.
Yeah, I think that might be just a bit of evolution here. As I'll get back to it here, we do have red hits on his last opponent here, looking to land one more shot, but his teammate Game in Canada is going to go ahead and take out Roaming Gnome. That's going to be a bit of a middle-of-the-road finish for Go Big or Go Gnome as we are getting into the middle of our Game 3 here. Now we have Red Hits Game in Canada, and Wonderful on the disrupt there. Red Hits is just going right in, trying to get all the red hits in, as he actually doesn't have an offhand gauntlet. I wonder what's going on there. Maybe he just didn't pick up a gauntlet that he thought he could really use all that well. Maybe there's just been a lack of loot. I don't think there would be. He does have epic loot on everything else, so we'll see how that plays out for him as he's just going straight in with the fire. All that he has right here, going to fly in, but getting sniped for all of his troubles. Look at the hits coming out. Not only the frost, but also the fire from the enemy team, and that is such a big mistake coming out. Getting so separated from the rest of his team, as you can see towards the northern side of the minimap. Now they get a full reset on, and it will be a clean 3v2 coming into the later part of this engagement.
Wow, one thing I have to make note of, just, you know, being a caster here, is that this lobby went 0 to 100 so quickly. And if nobody else was paying attention to that, I'm going to give you the information now. It was only maybe a couple of frames ago, you know, we were talking about the fact that there was 32 players left alive, and then all of a sudden the entire lobby went into this frenzy, and we have cut down to 17 players. So in terms of looking at the fact that he only has one scroll red, he has some good loot, but he has no offhand gauntlet, I feel like there had to have been some teams that have just been scrapping from the beginning, scrapping over, you know, maybe control of Halcyon, whatever the case may be. But we're looking at like the second zone here, and we just cut our player count in half, and that happened so quickly. I was looking, Death got a bunch of kills in the kill feed, Haunt was looking to scrap, and even this team right here, they're still in the thick of things, finding their reset, but they're really like not in the best position that they would want to be in, right?
Yeah, definitely not. Gaming Canada just taking a little bit too much time trying to line up that snipe, but Dirty Mike and the boys is going to go ahead and get him out of the playing field here. Now we see Wonderful trying to circle around, maybe a little bit of a res coming out from him, but looks like Gaming Canada is just going to be left alone here for the moment as they are rotating around. We do see King Ryzen going to go ahead and disrupt Wonderful, so now just one team left for 50 gold here. We do have red hits in the wings here. Only a fire. He did not pick up that toxic from earlier, so it is still only the fire, but he is getting swarmed on. As you can see, the health ticking down, and this might be the end for him. 1 HP to go, and 1 HP it will be, as it looks like he will die to the zone. Hopefully someone gets a cheeky little screenshot there to prove that kill, and it looks like that team 50 gold will go ahead and go out here very quickly, looking like 5th place, or 6th place rather, for that matter. But
yeah, so Dirty Mike keeping themselves going for sure.
Yeah, and now they're just looking on the western side of the zone here, looking to rotate in towards the eastern side. If we can get a quick look at that map, we'll be able to see where these teams are rotating into, as it looks like it will be towards the Stone Tooth Mountain area, along with Ruby Grove, everyone's favorite dating spot, as well as Avant-Garde. Lots of action to be had in those mountains there. And speaking of mountains, I'm sure we'll see a lot of Stone Shapers come down. And now just getting that final little bit of loot before our final engagement here in 10 seconds. The zone will be closing, and this game will be closing here very soon as well, as we're about to have so many fights break out.
Yeah, and that's the crazy thing. I mean, well, first of all, the fact that there's a Leggy Stone gauntlet right there, and he already has one. So this team in a pretty decent position. He doesn't have the most scrolls in the world. Maybe they just didn't really get that many chests. He does have the Finder's Keeper, so that, you know, there's some potential to find more. And look at that Alacrity, whether that was not sure if that was an actual Frostborn. I really didn't catch it right as we swapped. But hey, look, they're skating around with Alacrity, and now we're going to be on board with Haunt. And this is, you can read the body language from this team. They're looking for their poke, they're looking for their damage, but ultimately they've already decided that the fight is going to happen, and it all comes down to how this enemy team looks to respond to that. You know, Death taking a little bit of damage here. Rushfrog going to be followed up by some damage on him as well. And this is getting very bad very quickly. As you already see, Rushfrog is now playing this survival play style, really just looking to disengage, create a little bit of space for himself, as Cloud and Death are just about out of shards as well. But look at that, Cloud actually getting a disruption onto Speary as well as his teammate Death, and that's a full finish as they are able to just pull the fight in the direction that they wanted it to be in. That's a very, very good learning moment for anybody in chat, just to watch how that fight presumably was not going the way that they wanted, but they were able to continue to pull the fight back, disengage, find their poke, find their damage. Rushfrog was just kind of like playing this position again, using that Vigor talent again, that kind of like tanky frontline Pyromancer, as his teammate were able to do the damage that they were looking for. That had to have been a lot of damage coming out from Death and Cloud collectively there.
Oh, definitely. And I think we're about to see a lot more damage coming out from them in this next little engagement. As soon as we get back over the camera angle, we are seeing Dirty Mike and the boys line up for a third party as Death goes ahead and takes out Schno there very, very quickly. And now Mike looking to lay down a few snipes here, not quite connecting anything just yet, but going straight in with the Toxicologist. He does have 3 chances for Outbreak coming out right here. Going to go ahead and use 1 and 2 left on the board. 3 more seconds until that cooldown comes back, as now he will go ahead and line up a snipe. Not connecting that one either. Just needs to get a little bit closer to line up all these shots. And now we have a little bit of a break in the action here as they are separating out very, very quickly. And now we have the Stone Shaper just sort of farming and landscaping his way up. Looks like Death is going to go ahead and seal out the Exile onto Schno. So it'll be a 1v1 squad v squad going between Dirty Mike and the boys and Haunt, as we are going to see a freeze come out, maybe a follow-up. Actually, a little bit of a lack of follow-up as they will go ahead and rotate around this mountain, get a little bit of superior positioning. That's going to be 1 death there. Cloud's going to go ahead and go down. No, Dirty Mike and the boys, and now it is a 2v3 going into the rest of this action, Crashy.
Yeah, 2v3. You see Mike Wazowski very healthy, very strong on the chase, and a lot of damage is going to be going over towards the way of Haunt, as they were just finishing up a fight. That's going to be Hermias Mora finding a disruption onto Death, and Haunt goes down in that 3rd place position, but Mike Wazowski is still in full charge. It's that next fight, the last 2 teams remaining. Mike Wazowski looking to jump in the thick of the action. He does find the snipe. Yes, that's going to be a lot of damage, as they have to have control of the health economy here, and you see Mike is in full force, leading the charge again, playing that dynamic role where, yeah, he is a Stone Shaper, or Toxicologist rather. He has that kind of like assassin-like play style, but when you have this much of a health advantage, you really can just dive into the thick of it. And he's already looking on the hunt, trying to find these enemy players. It gets a little bit of a recloud potential. I'm not sure. I never saw him throw his own cloud. Maybe that was just his shadow step at the same time. I'm a little bit misstepping there, but it's that last fight, and they're just taking it slow now. Now this is the reset. You know, they found a lot of damage. I'm really surprised we didn't see a big disruption come out there. I think these players just kind of squealed themselves away, but they are in full chase here, OSK.
Yeah, no one's been disrupted yet, actually. Not from the enemy team, not from Dirty Mike and the boys either. But that's a big snipe landing on the Mike there, as he is left with about 20 effective health here between shields and health. He'll have to go ahead and rotate off. No recovery to speak of. So his escapist ability, the only thing he has, Hermias Mora, going to go ahead and take him down, as we now have King Ryzen trying to survive out here, getting frozen for his troubles. The big zone damage coming out. B-Nag over the top, going to go ahead and seal out a disruption onto Steel Mats here, as we now have Troll Equality versus Dirty Mike and the boys. And look at that conduit damage coming out so big, as now he's getting bursted down so much by all of this frost. And now B-Nag will have to rotate out, but it's not going to be enough. Hermias Mora finds another shot, and now it's King Ryzen versus all the rest of them. And Solar Bear TV, along with his squad with Troll Equity, will go ahead and take Game 3. And what a performance coming out. Third partying onto Team Haunt and sealing out the rest of those Exiles.
So that fight was weird. Like,
to say it mildly.
I'm gonna say it. There was such a dominant, like a position of dominance at the beginning of that fight, leading right out of the fight with Haunt. And it felt like that strength, that positioning, that high ground, having control of like the zone where it was pulling, all of that just kind of dissipated right in front of our eyes. It really felt like there was a really, really strong point where I was like casting, and I was like waiting for the disruption. I was waiting for a disruption. Yeah. And it just never happened.
Yeah, that really speaks. I think it was just a real lack of execution, I guess you could call it. Like the plan was there. You could see everyone's wheels turning and saying, okay, we're going to go ahead and hold down this mountain. We're going to go ahead and land our long range shots. We have our conduit on standby. We have our frost from our toxicologist on standby, but nothing is really connecting. And I think it's really just a testament to how well that Troll Equality was able to really play that out. There were little spots of cover that they could really make use of, especially with the zone closing the way it was. We had that little dip in the rocks. We had the village right behind it. We had just so many things in the way of what Dirty Mike and the boys can do. So it's just unfortunate that we're unable to see a bit of execution here. We did see, I believe, Mike himself going ahead and trying to seal out an exile onto one of these players in the cover that we mentioned before, and just a little bit of bad circumstance that he wasn't able to find all the outbreak damage he needed. And he must have been 20 HP because it was so close. But in any case, it was a great recovery from Troll Equality Troll Equity to go ahead and take the mountain for themselves. And we could see, despite the damage coming out from BNAG, just a really good example of team coordination, able to focus down one at a time from the enemy squad and able to seal out game 3 with all those exiles in hand.
Wait, first and foremost, I have to ask you, do you not believe in troll equality? Is it just about the finances and the equity now?
You know what? I'm not going to be a troll and answer that question. But in any case, I think that trolls are equal under the law with everybody around here. Okay. I'm a troll myself. As you can tell, I somehow landed on this casting desk. But in any case, I'm just really glad to see them perform well. I think they really had the short end of the stick coming in yesterday, and I'm just really glad to see them up on the board today. And that's really all I have to say about it. We did have the sub come out, as I mentioned earlier, and now that they have their full squad, their first pick teams, they're able to take first place in game 3.
Yeah, and so, I mean, one thing to talk about, I'm looking over at the standings, kind of where they're sitting now as they're being updated and whatnot. And, obviously, like, we have Haunt in a pretty strong position. And I think, I could be misspeaking, it might have been 4th place, but I think we've seen them at least in the top 3 all 3 games. They might have had one game where they got 4th, I'm not sure. But I think we've seen them in top 3 all 3 games. Regardless, my point being, the consistency is clearly showing from Haunt as they're going to be sitting in our first place position. We're going into game number 4 again. This will be the 4th game out of 8 that we're going to be playing. 4 games on NA, 4 games on EU, and then we're going to be totaling it all up, pulling it all together, taking the best 6 games that each team plays, and we'll be seeing our final standings. So, we got a little bit of time. We're going to be jumping into game number 4, and yeah, man, it's really interesting. I feel like patch 1.2, while I'll go ahead and say it, at least from my perspective, it's not the perfect patch. There's definitely some things that I'm not a huge fan of in terms of balance and things like that. But the talent meta and the playstyle meta, I do feel a bit more diversity. You're not seeing the same 2-2-2 build come out every single class. You're not seeing the one tank build that exists. There's a lot of opportunity. You're seeing, Fortitude back in the meta, like, getting a little bit of usage. You're seeing 3-1-2 builds. I mean, you're seeing Finders Keepers. We've already seen a little bit of Ambidextrous and Foresight. I mean, there is a lot of room for at least a little bit of discovery in terms of what your team is, what your game plan is going into this. And I really appreciate that. I think it's just way more fun, right? Even just as a caster or someone that's spectating the event, it's just more fun. It's more to talk about.
Yeah, and I could really go on for days about how great 2-2-2 was back in the day when we had a Fervor at 2 cost. And I think that really is the big kicker here, is that Fervor was 2 cost back in the day. And now with it being 3 costs, it doesn't fit into quite as many builds as we'd like to see. Of course, we do have the staple conduit build still alive. We have Focus Mana, Fervor, and Recovery, even applied to different classes such as Pyromancer, or even yesterday as we saw Toxicologist. There's still a lot of damage to be had out of all of that. But yeah, I am very proud of the balanced team of this one here. I would have liked to see Recovery take a little bit of a bigger hit, especially with the bug fix to Vital Stone. I think it definitely belongs in the 3 cost, but that's just my opinion. Could be completely wrong there, but in any case, one of the bigger balance changes that we saw is the addition of these smaller potions. And I think that's something being heavily slept on by a lot of people. I think that, yes, while we did have a nerf to Thirsty, it might not have been the most deserving of a nerf, but we do have, like I said, those smaller potions coming out. And like we saw yesterday, if you can get a hold of those smaller potions with Thirsty in hand, have you ever seen the meme where it's like Tempest go burr, or this is like small potions go burr, because you can just like have 6 stacked right up and you can just gobble it all down. And not only are you providing healing for yourself, but you're providing all that healing for your team as well, who are pretty much always going to be running recovery. So you have all of that sustain all stacked up on each other, and it's just a really big strategy you can really deal some big damage with. As we see a random squad going to go ahead and get torn apart by Troll Equity here, having a nice start already, but it looks like we might be in the middle of a third party, or maybe just the rest of the squad. Look at it go. Solar Bear going to take out 2 along with Steel Mets on 1.
Yeah, and you know how it goes, the early game fights for control. And we have a lot of teams that are participating in this event. So, we know where some teams are landing, but there's not a lot of, we haven't quite gotten enough to really develop the off-spawn storyline, right? Like we're building that over time. And it's always fun to see like what teams are going to hard stick to what different POIs, or if there are different strategies in terms of where the portals are actually landed to decide their drop spots. And that's something that just takes a little bit of time, but it's very interesting. It's very, very interesting, as we're going to be moving over toward Ruby now. Is maybe a potential fight, maybe just kind of like surveying the lands, looking for some extra gear. And man, Game in Canada already has some pretty solid gauntlets. I don't know if this is what his preferred setup is for now, but he doesn't have a Tempest in his team, so maybe that Wind offhand is just something to use for now. But we're going to see how that develops. And he's actually running a pretty cheap build. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is that Focus Mana in his first slot? I believe it is. So he's going to be running Focus Mana, Finders Keepers, in recovery. So that's like a 4-point build right now. So little interesting, a little bit different.
Yeah, you probably would expect to see a little bit of fervor coming out, but if you're going to end up spacing your shots anyway for the focus mana benefit, then maybe fervor doesn't really matter all that much. I think he's really trying to focus on getting as many boulders in his kit as much as possible, along with tornadoes to really help him reposition that. But we're going to see Rush Frog going to go ahead and go in with a beautiful Bug Hunter skin, my second favorite now that we have Ethereal Assassin. But in any case, he's going to be rotating right off. Going to ignore the player that he was tagging earlier. Maybe a bit of a mistake, maybe not, but it looks like he's trying to just follow his team as much as possible, trying to just really focus down as a 3-man unit, and it looks like he might actually be able to take this one on his own. Kind of loses it for a second there, but with the Combust on his Fireball, I think he'll be really, really secure in taking this first one, and he is. Rama Raparu, You Are My Clarity, and Puppy Penguin all going to go down to both Death and Rush Frog. So nice seal out very early on, keeping that score up, staying in first place so far, and now we see Sputnik kind of escaping from a bit of an unfavorable position.
Yeah, and this build right here, I'm really, really starting to find a big amount of appreciation and just really enjoying the 3-1-2 build coming out from both Pyromancer and from the Stone Shapers. It's a very team-oriented build, having that front line, but look at this, Sputnik trying to get behind this enemy player, putting out a lot of damage with that Shockwave, but now decides to reposition, respace out. He does have that recovery doing a little bit of work for him, but the lightning bolts are coming in full force, and he does not have Rune Fluency. He doesn't have a charge. He's just got to try to stay alive the best that he can, but the pressure is on. Is he going to be able to find that disruption? Yes, he will. Wonderful is going to get completely turned around on, as it looks like Sputnik has a little bit of a free moment now, but that enemy player coming in, that was a Shockwave that landed just to the side of him. He's looking to fly back over to his team, and that's the strength of the Flight Room, being able to close such a large distance in such a short amount of time, and especially on a build like Stone Shaper where you're not running the Runic Fluency, you don't really need that kind of like short mid-fight mobility as much as, say, maybe running a Flight Rune with a build like this. So definitely something really, really interesting. He's going to go ahead and get the Roman Gnome back up, and this is a fight that is turning on its head for the enemy team, as it looks like Sputnik is making a massive impact here, trying to potentially find a res for his teammate, but his teammate is going to go down, and it's going to be Sputnik, the last one left alive. I believe this is going to be a 1v1. The last two players, the Boulder Fall is going to connect onto him. He does not have a rune charge here. This is going to be the full-on fight, face-to-face, trying to land the Shockwaves. Is he going to be able to connect with it? It's back and forth. Oh, the Lightning Strike coming out. It looks like Sputnik does get control of that rune charge. Those lightning bolts still just keeping the pressure on him, but he has to be able to play the time of his teammates and also win this fight here. This is going to be such an important moment. The last 1v1, he doesn't have control of high ground with Shockwaves flying down towards him. The lightning bolts as well. He's not going to stay in it. Looks like he's going to go down, unfortunately, as now Wonderful trying to reset and pick up his teammates, hopefully before some kind of a third party comes in.
Man, what a fight that we just saw there. That was absolutely amazing. We just saw them going back and forth, really trading the positions out there. It's a little bit unfortunate that he did get caught out by the lightning so many times, but you could see this kind of smoke screen he's trying to land with all these toxic clouds come out and all the slams he's trying to get uphill. It's unfortunate that it did get cut off where it did, but excellent job to Sputnik. Definitely carrying his team there in the later parts of that, just trying to keep everything alive. Unfortunately, not going to work out for him, but man, that was such a great effort. So good stuff to him. But unfortunately, going to go ahead and get taken out by Wonderful, I believe, and I think Solar Bear. I'm really confused as to what just happened in the latter part of that, if it was a third party or not. But Cloud going to go ahead and take out King Ryzen as he's now just looking to kind of, rotate out of this mountainous area here. We do have the Conduit coming out from Team Haunt, and the Toxicologist can just do so much work as that corrosion is being laid down. A few sticky puddles coming out with viscosity, and King Ryzen doing everything he can to rotate towards a safe area for the res, and he might get it off here.
Yeah, BNAG is going to find this pickup here. And one thing I have to say is that the damage that came from Haunt, I don't exactly understand how this fight has kind of disengaged or slowed down, but the damage coming from Haunt, from Cloud specifically, it really came out of nowhere. Like, King Ryzen had very little opportunities to react to that. And again, playing a Stone Shaper build that doesn't have Runic Fluency, not going to be like a 2-2-2 build, but look at this, the fight is still going on. King Ryzen was able to find a full reset now. Hopefully going to be able to find some kind of a winning position. Yes, he does. That's Hermias. Mora is going to find or get disrupted as he finds that, peels off for his teammate, and now he's in full force. The wind spam coming out, the focus mana shockwaves, very, very big damage. They're storm fighting here, but this might be the situation that they need to get themselves some points on the board. You also see a lot of fights going on in other sections of the map as well. BNAG and Mike Wazowski presumably are going to be chasing up that last member as King Ryzen's going to go ahead and finish this off.
Man, I hope King Ryzen gets a better belt out of this, and yes, he will find the purple there. That's amazing, as now he has almost the full build that he needs right here. Just a little bit better shoes, and just a little bit of the Pumas, the purple Pumas that we need to get on our feet here so we can run faster, jump higher, get stronger here, as we are rocking the focus mana. And you saw all the damage coming out from that, 52s for days, and also more damage on the wind shears, as now we see KDA and his squad of the Heathens looking to take first place again, trying to land. Oh, what a snipe! KDA drilling him. Pizza roll 69 for 2024. Sit down, my friend. You are out of this lobby as you have a frostbolt straight through your skull. KDA making absolute great use of the vulnerability that is that flight rune, and now he'll be able to rotate off with the Thirsty, get that safeguard potion up, also restore the rest of his teammates, and they can just rotate right back into the squad if they want to, taking up the higher ground on this mountain. They'll just be opting to completely disengage, and my goodness, I still can't get over that snipe. That was beautiful.
Yeah, a beautiful snipe landed, and just prior to that, you see Imagine getting a triple kill himself, going to be taking out an enemy team. And look at this Toxicologist Cloud, that Toxic Cloud trying to be used for a little bit of cover, and Death and Haunt are in full pursuit. KDA is so very low. He's not going to be able to get that Firefly. He bounces off, a little bit of a mechanical misplay here. This is not the position that KDA wants to be in, with Haunt in full chase. That's Rush Frog finding that disruption, and now Cozy and Speary. I mean, what choice do they have? They're going to go ahead and skate out of here. They're going to have to leave KDA. Unfortunately, not going to be able to save him. It's really just not worth the risk. I mean, they could full send this fight, but I just don't think it's worth it. So they're going to go ahead and skate out of this situation. Rush Frog landing that nice Ice Lance. Just go ahead and secure one more one more point. Why not? Throw it up on the board.
Yeah, why not? Go ahead and thirst that off. We'll go ahead and get a little bit more potions, a little bit more sustain for the rest of our team here. And there's really no reason not to go for the thirst right there, as really you don't want to risk them being rezzed later on and then have to take the full 3v3. They're really just planning ahead and saying, hey, if we can get this one guy here, then in the late game, if they come back, then we only have a 2v3 to deal with, especially with as many third parties as there is in the late game, then that'll definitely be more favorable for them. But what a nice snipe coming out from Rush Frog, as now they'll be looking to rotate immediately to this last little man over here, just trying to reset but not getting it off here, as Rush Frog is looking for the next snipe, and just missing off the top there, but the fireballs are on deck. One more shot will do it, and it looks like Death is going to go ahead and seal out the kill onto Bondrin here, who's just rocking these lobbies over here. He's not even part of the tournament here, but he is doing just fine himself there. And now there's another cheap little Frost with Rush Frog. Death's going to clean that one up as well. A Frost coming on to Rush Frog himself as he's just looking to rotate around towards these mountains, get a little bit of cover, get a little bit of reset going. get the shields back up, and we'll be right back to the sniping here in just a moment.
Yeah, 15 players left alive. I think they're going to be playing up against this SAP team. You know, Viper, Imagine, a couple players I've seen in the kill feed just earlier in this game. It's going to be the last member left alive. They're going to go ahead and take him down. So Bondrin, Viper, Imagine, they get taken down. You see BNAG, Chazzy actually getting disrupted himself, but this has to be a fight here over with Dirty Mike and the boys fighting just over here outside the Cathedral area, outside of Halcyon. We'll see how this develops. And you know, one thing I wanted to talk about a little bit of how the Rush Frog build works. You know, he's got that Finders Keepers running the 3-1-2 build with Vigor and Recovery, and it's just noteworthy in terms of understanding some high-level play. Look at this, though. Oh, Mike Wazowski just bounces into the enemy's face. He's running the Wolf's Blood rune. I wonder if this is by design. I don't really know. Maybe just unlucky, hasn't been able to find the loot that he's looking for, but either way, putting it to good use so he's able to chase down these enemy players. Finding a bit of a reset, just a small, slight, slow movement, but look at that. Speary goes down. Death finds a disruption or an exile onto Cozy. I think that's actually them finishing up that entire team. And this was a 3-team engagement, how as Haunt has pushed into this fight, Mike Wazowski doing whatever he can just to maybe full rotate out of this situation. He has to find the reset. He wants to get as much placement as possible, but he has no mobility rune, and they know what direction he's going. Unfortunately for Mike Wazowski, I think Haunt is going to be in full pursuit on this exile here.
Man, Mike Wazowski's finding a different kind of movement. Do you see how fast he's running right now with Escapist and Wolf's Blood? It's actually crazy. And if he gets damaged at all, then he gets even more speed. So he's just out here, you know, running the track, going straight and turning left when he needs to. He'll be fine running away, getting that reset off. But we're seeing Rush Frog just absolutely demolishing this man, as Cloud is going to go ahead with the cleanup here. Solar Bear going to take out Snow. So there is a little bit of threat still on the table here. It might be a full squad left over here, as Death is going to go ahead and seal out BNAG. And yes, it will be just a 1 squad versus 1 squad situation. I do believe that Mike Wazowski, or rather King Ryzen, I forget which one is over there, that is rotated out. I think that's going to be the last target on the menu for today, as looks like they're rotating pretty aggressively. I don't think there's any way to get that res off on that last squad. So this might just be a countdown towards the end as he gets spotted out towards the tree. You're already in second place, man. I don't know if you can pull this one out, but if you can, that would be quite the play.
Hey, any potential damage he can find. You see, I think there's actually 2 players left.
Oh, there are 2.
I believe they're on the same squad, maybe. I'm not really sure.
No, they're not.
Actually, it's Solar Bear takes out Mike Wazowski. Yes, we find that last little bit of information. So Solar Bear, he's going to get the extra exile, the extra damage, catch the second place over Mike Wazowski, and ultimately Rush Frog and the boys from Haunt are going to find themselves another first place finish. Wow, that was funny. I wasn't sure if it was the same team. It was a little, had to wait for a little bit of information. And it's funny because I was going to say, hey, man, if he's the last member left alive, maybe BNAG was down somewhere. I didn't quite catch it. But I was going to say, hey, Mike Wazowski might be able to get a little bit more damage points here. But unfortunately, Solar Bear just comes out of nowhere and kind of changes the narrative up a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. You could definitely see Team Troll Equity definitely trolling the placements there, as he's going to go ahead and steal second from our hero over there, Mike Wazowski, and just absolutely just yoinking it from him. Now, Team Hot still finishing in first. They are staying very consistent, as you did mention, and you made a point earlier that of all these 4 games, they are indeed getting at least top 3 in the squads here. I think their only off finish was game number 3, where they actually did get 3rd place, and game number 2, where they got 2nd place. So a little bit of an order there: 1st place, 2nd place, and 3rd place in game 1, 2, and 3. And we're just seeing some excellent stuff from them in terms of mechanics, able to land those long range shots. Even though the Frost Gauntlet definitely has a little bit of a drop towards the end of its trajectory, they are still making it work from more than one teammate, as we saw.
Yeah, and I have to say, I don't know if we're ever going to see a meta in terms of squads form where there was just like one specific composition that runs like one specific set of talents that really just becomes the meta team composition for squads. I really feel like there's too much subjectivity in playstyles that allows for more room than that. But one thing I got to say is I'm really, really liking this combination from like this 2 front line. We have Cloud sitting in the back. He's got his conduit. He can kind of flow with the fight. He moves in and out. But we have Rush Frog and Death, and they just fly at everybody. It's like full on aggression, W key. Like I have Vigor, whatever. I'm running finders keepers. I've been feeding my teammates scrolls the whole game. Like I'm good to go. We both are rocking recovery. Well, I mean, Death's not rocking recovery. He's running the escapist talent, but he's fast and loose, jumping in the action. And on top of Rush Frog, just like taking this, like, again, kind of like that tank role, taking visual aggro and just being inside the face of at least one player at any given time. Meanwhile, Cloud is just shredding people, just don't mind me. Just let me, throw my conduit damage all over the place. It's a nice setup. You can see what they're going for with it, and it's obviously very effective.
Yeah, that's the name of the game. Even since the days of pre-alpha, that term W key has been a staple term for the longest time, and for a good reason. Rush Frog, Death, and Cloud able to see it firsthand as they were all there in the very beginning. But guys, that's going to do it for our first 4 games. We're going to get you to a halftime break, hop over to EU for the last little bit of those game 4s. Crashy, you're doing some sort of spell on me, looking to cast me into halftime. We'll be right back, guys. Y'all enjoy the break and enjoy the montages here on deck. Hello, welcome back to the Element Fusion Qualifier number 2. Crashy over here has some music in his ear. He's just jamming out. But we got 4 more games for you on the EU side of things going right in as we get ready for game number 5. Crashy, how was that halftime for you, my friend?
Oh, it was nice. I was in it. I didn't know. I didn't know what's coming up. That's pretty cool.
I had no idea.
It's the one element video that we put out when there's like the plays of all the best moments and stuff. I actually really like that video. I don't know who put that one together, but it was really, really good. But yeah, no, it's always fun. We don't have Cat Jam. We were just talking about it a second ago. We don't have Cat Jam.
I know. Maybe we should reach out to a certain mod and element and really bother him to get Cat Jam in there. But anyway, dude, I'm really excited to see these players come right back out and really show us what they're made of here. We saw a lot of consistency from Haunt and definitely a lot of pushback from Team Troll Equity there. Your trolls are coming out, Crashy. They're really showing themselves today. And I'm really interested to see if we can get any EU squads really show themselves as well, as we are going to their home region. And we'll see if any NA players can really rain on their parade.
Yeah, I think if I'm not going to remember, and I don't have the list of like the regions pulled up in front of me, but I remember one team has like 2 NA players and like an EU player. There's at least one team. There might be more, but that's going to be interesting because they can like kind of like power swap. You know what I mean? Like flip their little power a little bit. But yeah, it's always interesting. Yeah. And obviously we're trying to give everybody the opportunity to play, especially in a squads environment. We have console players playing. We have NA, EU players. So it's really fun that we can put on an event like this where we can play 8 total games, take the best 6 performances. It's fair. It's across the board. Anybody has an opportunity. So if you guys are new, I mean, we know who's around, but if you're new, you're checking out Element for the first time, you're watching some competitive Spellbreak for the first time, join the Discord, get involved, start looking for your group, build your team, come join in on the fun. We like to have a lot of fun here. Now, what's this little, let me see if I can find it. It's always hard. This little bar down here, we have our donators. This all directly goes straight into the event, into the production, into the prize pools. So anybody that's featured there, we appreciate you. Anybody that wants to join that bar, definitely consider it. It's definitely something to think about. So we would appreciate any and all support. And same goes for Proletariat. We got to talk about them too. Thank you. Huge shout out to Proletariat helping us put this one on. We love partnering up with them and working with them and just showcasing the amazing skill that these players have in an amazing game such as Spellbreak.
Absolutely, and it's even more great now that we have prize pools for the qualifiers themselves. We do have $30 per qualifier going right out to all of our players, and we have $10 going to each member of the winning squad. So it's very great that we have that going on. And just to break down those donations for you, 70% are going directly to these prize pools, and 30% going to element production related things, such as Crashy's new mic that we're about to have on. He's actually about to have a new green screen coming up, and now really all of us about to have green screen. It's going to be great. So definitely a lot of stuff coming right our way here. 30% again going to production, 70 to our prize pools. So it's really exciting stuff that we're able to get better production for you guys. So thank you all for donating, those of you that do, and thanks for hanging out in the chat as per usual. And we'll be getting into game 5 here very shortly, hopefully within the next few minutes.
Yeah, pretty soon. We're halfway to the end. The teams are changing things around. Maybe they're moving their builds around. We always have that like that little dialogue that we have about like what kind of builds do you run on NEU when you're running on higher ping or vice versa. So we'll see a little bit of that. But ultimately, this isn't a solos competition, so you still have to play and fight with your team. So it looks like we might be jumping into the game early on. Got Mike Wazowski already in a fight here. So does have a belt or, got some common loot on, but this player doesn't look like they have very much of anything. Unfortunately, Mike Wazowski stepping in that little puddle. But I think that they might be in kind of what seems like a power position here. This player is just looking to disengage. He hits him with a noodle. So I think Mike Wazowski is going to find the disruption here. But actually has to get through that Vital Stone first. Vital Stone Gamer coming out in full force. So it looks like Mike Wazowski is probably going to find this one.
Yeah, it looks like this is just a matter of time. And that's really what Vital Stone is all about. He's taking quite a bit. His teammate BNAG has to go ahead and get a free win. The Crocker going ahead and getting down, getting the Thirst all angled out. We do have the Mana Vault loot already into Mike Wazowski's hands. That legendary Shadow Step is going to be big going into the late game, whether it's him that has it or another squad that happens to exile. That's going to be another exile onto Juan Sanchez 11. Going to go ahead and take him out of the game, get his sweet loot, hopefully a better Toxic for his troubles. And looks like the Frost will be on deck for whoever needs it.
Yeah, absolutely. But we'll see. Are they going to go back and loot? Is he just going to take over this tower here? The early game, especially if you're not running something like Finders Keepers, you got to at least get a certain number of chests so that way you can kind of secure some of that strength in your talents. Now, scrolls, they're kind of in a squad environment, they're a little bit more rare, right? You're not going to get as many as you would in solos when you really just wipe out an area and completely take it over. And that's really why I love that strength of that like 3-1-2 build that we're starting to see more and more with Finders Keepers thrown in. Because if you're already running like a Vigor recovery build or a Harmony recovery build, something like that, why not throw that in instead of Dexterity and really feed those scrolls to your teammates? And I was going to bring this point up in our last games. Blizz finds a nice little exile here, but I was going to bring this point up last game. Rush Frog running that 3-1 build on the Pyromancer, and every time if you look at it, this is just to give a little bit more of that insight to what he's thinking with his team. Every time you look at it, when you see his scrolls, his usage of scrolls, he's never using any of those body scrolls, because why would he? Maxing up the Finders Keepers is probably low on their priority. So that's something to think about if you're looking to employ kind of a build or a team strategy like that for yourself.
Yeah, the top tier funneling strat coming out from Crashy himself. So good observation there that we are really only worried about the knowledge potions coming out from these chests as opposed to how many scrolls we can get, as we already get quite a bit. As we see KDA and Speary already missing one teammate. Cozy is already completely out of the game. The Heathens will have to really make up some ground here. Speary is getting bursted down very quickly. Only about 10 health left on him, and now it is 0. He will go ahead and be disrupted. KDA slowing himself and getting taken out by Chazzy. So unfortunate for them to go out so early, one of our higher teams. But Squad 7 coming out here and really showing what they're made of, and it looks like they might even have a third party coming in.
Oh yeah, the third party coming in hot and heavy. You do see Bolt is getting very low, already has a bit of focus on him as well. It does look like Chaz is trying to get some reset going, but the damage is already coming his way. I don't believe he was able to finish that pot. So unfortunately, this just looks like a pretty cut and dry situation. Wonderful and his team are just coming in right off the back of that last finished fight, and the last member left alive is going to be Bud God. The last one, can he make some kind of an impact? Regardless, Chazzy is going to go down. So Chazzy, baby, he's going to be out of this one. Unfortunately, that's just kind of the name of the game. If you're not able to kind of create some of that space, after the end of a fight, then you can get third party. Meanwhile, looking at the kill feed, we have Haunt, and they're just doing Haunt things, right? You know what I mean? Like, it's Halloween. Halloween is over, but they're still super, super spooky.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I saw the Baron skin on Rush Frog at the very beginning of this event, so it's definitely some haunted things still going on, haunting our kill feed if nothing else, and a lot of thirst coming out from them as well. No real big squad wipes, really. We're getting one member at a time for most of these engagements, so we are still keeping an eye on the total placement for everybody. There's still a lot of opportunity for these players to hide in the bushes, hide in the trees, wherever they need to, and still make their way into the last little circle to get maybe second or third place, as we've been seeing all day today. Now we are going to go ahead and see Haunt track down the last member of this team, maybe a whole nother squad. We'll have to find out as Rush Frog's laying down the fire, literally fire, and now he'll have to dash in to follow this up. His squad right behind him. Let's see if he can slam anything down.
Yeah, and one thing to note is that we're not quite early game. You know, we're already kind of making that early to mid game transition. But Rush Frog is like fully scrolled up. His whole team has insane loot, and they're just stomping through the field just off the sheer power that they've been able to build for themselves in such a short amount of time. Cloud finding the disruption onto Starzizer, and Rush Frog is going to do the same onto Xanaren. And this is what Haunt does. This is the difference between being a competitive team, being a team that is good, or being a team that is great. And it's almost like we need to VOD review the entirety of their game here, because I don't really feel like we're that far into the game, and yet we're already looking at a team that has multiple exiles. They're fully read up, they're super knowledgeable, they're just dominating the field, and it really speaks volumes to the sheer talent that they have and the execution that they have.
Yeah, they definitely have a great flow from early game into mid game, getting some early exiles and making that flow into even more exiles. If you can get that epic loot before everyone else, you definitely have that big advantage. In the way that their mechanics are looking today, you definitely want to push all that advantage. But Steelmet's not looking too good himself. He's being slowed down, slammed himself, needs to spring step right out of there, but the conduit is coming on deck. That's a lot of damage, out of mana, and about to be out of health. There it is. Rama Raparu going to go ahead and get the disrupt on a Steelmet's there. That's our team Troll Equity going down with one member already disrupted. Now, this first little zone, not going to be ticking too much health. We do have a little straggler here watching for the thirst here, but his team is so separated out, I'm not even sure if they're going to be able to make up the ground to go ahead and save their teammate, but that is a lot coming out. There's the thirst coming right out. There's no way that they can get to him at this point, and that's going to be one team member down for Team Heathens. Now we're going to see King Ryzen coming right out here, trying to get a little bit of damage off the members of this wall right here, going for the Stone Shaper build and opting to reset before he gets into even more action.
Yeah, and he does have that potential last scroll on the recovery. He is storm tanking, so it would be a small benefit, but I think his teammates are in a decent position, as this is going to be Mike Wazowski, you know, Dirty Mike and the boys just kind of coming in hot. And look at that Rush Frog. I mean, we're in the kill feed already. We just we leave this team for like one engagement, and they're already just like destroying the lobby. But Cloud getting so very low, and actually this looks like a ton of action. Sputnik going to find the disruption onto Cloud, so he's not going to be in the best position. And you see Rush Frog in full disengage. This might be a rare scenario where, you know, Death is in the thick of the fight, but Rush Frog might be calling, hey, look, we need to get out of here. There's way too many teams. We might be able to make a play for Cloud if he can pull back towards us. And this is one of those moments that I'm really, really curious to see how they respond to the action that's going around. Death getting the disruption onto Wonderful, and Rush Frog is playing a really interesting role here, where he's kind of floating around the battlefield, dodging as much damage as he can, but he's looking for information, relaying that to Death, and then ultimately they're going to make a decision based on what they find.
Yeah, and Cloud definitely having to keep up the comms here, saying, hey, they're going for me, they're thirsting me, and then Rush Frog can then lay down a quick fireball. As you saw there, the Combust giving him that extra little bit of space to sort of just get in the ballpark of all of those, of his orbs, so that they can disrupt the disruption, actually. Yeah, now, Rush Frog having to kite back off, getting so many shots coming right for his enemies as he gets him right off the stairs, but Rush Frog's in a little bit of trouble here, as he is going to have to kite back out towards this tower, get a quick reset off, and then re-engage once Death says it's okay.
That has to be some of the best defensive stalling play that I've seen in competitive Spellbreak history. And the reason I say that is because it's not like he's just running in pursuit of trying to save his life. He's doing it with Death on his hip the entire time. Unfortunately, Cloud's running out of time. You see Rush Frog is going for it. Does he find it? Yes, he does. Rush Frog catching that last little bit. Death left alone. He's trying to stay alive, but Death is holding his own, and that is the strength of having strong individual players. But again, just to speak to that disengage, Rush Frog was dead to rights, and yet Death was on the hip of him, fighting with him, peeling for him, giving him the opportunity to reset. Haunt is fully alive, OSK.
Wow, that was amazing. You probably never see anyone do it better. Probably only matched by UT from yesterday, but that was such a great time. Great managing of the time that you have, great managing of the resources that you have available, and they're able to make it with just a fraction of a second left on Death's death timers. So I just can't see any other team doing that better. That was amazing to watch. But now that they are going to go ahead and get on the south part of Ruby Grove, I am getting confirmation that he literally had 0.1 seconds left on his timer, and I think that's the lowest that the game measures, so that's really cutting it close. But Rush Frog definitely with the precision to go ahead and make it happen. Now we have Blitz with one teammate down. Sputnik is down as well. Going to go ahead and seal out the last little exile onto Wonderful, as now there's another squad to deal with here. And he's having to just slap around. Going to go ahead and kite around this tower here. Having to keep an eye out for Team Haunt here, as he will go ahead and hide in the bush, but he is going to get found out very quickly. Having to rotate off away from his teammates towards this mountain, and I'm not sure if he's going to get away from this one, and he is not. Mike Wazowski going to seal that one out, and Team Dirty Mike and the boys having to contest a Haunt here on this mountain, I would imagine, going right in.
What an interesting position we find Mike Wazowski in. And yeah, I mean, unfortunately, not much of a reset coming out from the side of that last player that we were just on board with, unfortunately. But Cloud and Rush Frog, they're not slowing down. Why not step on the gas further? We're pushing our lead. It doesn't matter what server we're on. It doesn't matter how much of a lead we have. We want to take this one home. Mike Wazowski with the big midair fireball coming out right there.
I was not expecting. I literally rocked back in my chair with my jaw dropped. That was such an amazing shot. You saw the distance and the amount of prediction that he had to make. That was so precise for Mike Wazowski. And you can see him just sort of rotating out towards the western part of this Ruby Grove. Now we have Team Haunt just sort of staking out. We do have the third person beat coming on. We have to be really quiet, but here comes the zaps and we're getting right into the action. Conduit on full display. Cloud getting all this damage out. The TP coming out, the double TP, and now we have the rest of the squad to deal with here. Getting frozen, getting shocked out, and look at this. They are playing this position so perfectly. Rush Frog going to go ahead and take the front line here, able to follow up so well with that Firefly skill. Now we have Cloud on the back, keeping an eye on all the squads in the area, definitely relaying to his team where everyone is, and gotta watch out for that boulder. But right after, we're getting right back into the action with Rush Frog trying to steal out this exile. He is so close, and now we have a little bit of armor being chipped off. Rush Frog getting right in, Cloud with the follow-up, and that's just a missed fireball, but one more will do it. They are so close to getting this out. The Shadow Step coming out, not quite doing just yet. They will have to go back, reset, get ready for the third party coming in, as they are just not able to seal that one out just yet.
Yeah, unfortunately not going to find that disruption, but one thing I'm loving is just the sheer positioning that's coming out from them. They're constantly playing the edge. Now it's getting a little bit messy as Cloud, Rush Frog, and Death are all getting very low. BNAG finding the disruption. Rush Frog is so low, as well as Death. The last couple players left alive is Rush Frog. It looks like he might not be able to stay in this. Death going to be the last one as the disruptions, the exiles, they settle in. That's going to be a third place finish. Now Mike Wazowski might be able to get rest here. Yes, they do. The last two teams remaining, it's going to be Dirty Mike and the boys versus this last team, and you're seeing they're just trying to put out some damage. And this might be a little bit split. There could be a solo or something in this as well, because there's some fighting out here on the edge. The conduit damage, yes, that's Erngi 90 gonna be one player. That was MG. Okay, MG. A little blurry for me on that one, but yeah, we see the final little bits of damage coming out. BNAG is not letting up with the conduit. The lightning bolts putting out that damage, finds the disruption. That's Hermias Mora, and one player left alive. It does look like Dirty Mike will be able to secure this victory.
Oh man, it's just one feather fall away. The immunity coming out from Tundra actually getting slammed down by Solar Bear, but King Ryzen there for the backup, getting that stone straight through your flash freeze. That's going to be a first place finish from Dirty Mike and the boys. Excellent stuff to them, and great job, of course, to Haunt and our friends there at Troll Equality, getting all of those placement points, and of course getting some cheeky exiles as well. That was some beautiful teamwork that we saw from Haunt. And again, 0.1 seconds left on the timer for Death. I don't think that could have been any more clean what Rush Frog just pulled off.
Yeah, it's crazy because I mean we're playing 8 games, right? We're taking the best of 6. And that means that if you have 4 knock out of the park performances on NA as an NA team,
I'm having to block this blind coming in. Hold on, let me get my cool guy glasses.
There you go. So if you have 4 knockout performances on NA, then you still need at least a couple of good performances on EU. And so that's what we're looking at, right? Like that's definitely not the best performance coming out from Haunt. And they did really, really well, especially just the kind of like ebb and flow of their fights when they're peeling for each other, saving each other, rezzing for each other. So you see some really great play coming out here. But ultimately, what we're looking at is like a really good game that's going up for the standings for them, going on the leaderboards for them, because they needed it regardless.
Yeah, and that's a good point that you bring up. We are on our off region here with EU from Haunt and some of the rest of our teams. So that's really good to make the best out of kind of a bad situation. And of course, like we were saying earlier, Dirty Mike also on the off region doing some great stuff on their side of the line as well. So it's going to be very interesting to see how we can continue on into game 6, 7, and 8, seeing if there's going to be any sort of adjustment coming in from any of these teams, whether they take a little bit more of a safe approach with maybe some more pyromancer, maybe getting off of the conduit that requires that pinpoint aim. Of course, some of us here in these lobbies aren't really having any trouble landing that. So we'll have to see how that plays out going into our future games. But that was some truly great stuff that we saw today from game number 5.
I was actually going to say, when we had a nice little pocket of time where we were watching Cloud toward the end of that game, and you can kind of see, I mean, we talked about their composition specifically, having like the 2 frontliners, having that 1 backliner. And I think if you're not running like a full rushdown team where the whole goal is just to get in and do as much damage as you can, that's probably what you'll tend to see, is like maybe like a mid floating kind of ebb and flow character on a toxicologist, frontliner, stone shaper, or pyromancer, someone sitting in the back. But we got to see it from his perspective really, really well, where he was just watching his teammates and he didn't really make any different decisions other than just holding down his lightning bolts. Like, that was the role. That was the point. He got a lot of damage, and then we finally saw like the runic fluency, shadow steps, like he full engaged. He was trying to find the fireball. He didn't land it. The player was able to get away, but we got a really good amount of time where you can really see how that strategy and how that team composition plays from the perspective of Cloud.
Yeah, definitely. And you made a good point bringing it up earlier today that that conduit can really do a great job of just fishing for information. You can definitely tell who's low and who's not, whether you're hitting armor, whether you're hitting health, and you have that display of the health bar there for you and your team as well. So definitely a good way to relay that to the rest of your squad. That way the front line can sort of rotate off, get the quick exile, and then you're looking at a 3v2, possibly a 3v1 if you need to. And that's really the difference between all these teams, is that they're able to really focus down each of these targets and rotate out when they need to. If someone's getting low, maybe the conduit can come in with their fireball offhand or their stone offhand, kind of rotate them out of the fight, let them get a quick reset, and then they're right back to playing front line. So Haunt doing a very good job of that. Mike Wazowski doing a great job of that. Troll Equity doing a great job of that. And that's really the difference between all these teams. And it's going to be very, very evident going into game number 6. Who really is going to make those adjustments. Of course, some are going to do it better than others, but we still have a whole lot of tournament to do. Again, only taking the best 6 out of 8 games. So maybe if you're not adjusting in 2 of those games, then maybe we'll get them dropped off for you. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But Crashy, I'm really, really interested to know, or do you think we're going to see any heavily contested mana vaults now that we have Haunt obviously playing the aggressor? They always get great loot early in the game, and they're able to push that advantage. Do you think we're going to see other teams try to sort of interrupt that style of play?
I think, like, and this is something that I've been thinking about a lot, and I think I even remember OSK bringing it up a bit. OSK play safe, yeah, bringing it up. I think I remember hearing Plays bring it up specifically yesterday. Is like, at what point do you start trying to hunt stronger teams earlier in the game, right? At what point do you decide, like, okay, look, maybe we can't really brawl with these guys. Like, they're full loaded out. They always seem to find some kind of way to get the max loadout possible because they're just rolling through the lobby. Like, are our chances actually better, like statistically, from like a mathematical percentage standpoint, to just land on them and drop and try to fight them really quickly? And I don't know. I feel like that's risky, right? It's really dangerous. It's a decision that's hard to make, and it's something that I almost might want to see practiced first. Like, let's just be dumb. Like, let's just land somewhere that we don't land. Let's do something that nobody knows that we're going to do. And then all of a sudden we find a situation where, hey, look, I just wiped out the number 1 team right now. This is our game to like really push and W key and pop off and gain a bunch of points just because we knocked out that team. So it's going to be interesting to see if that type of meta, that type of strategy ever develops. I don't know. I find that in competitive battle royales, you often find teams that find a strategy, they find a drop spot, they get really comfortable, and then they just stick with that. But you never know.
Yeah, you make a good point, but it's also important to know that we are only taking 10 teams into the finals from all these qualifiers. We have 8 lined up so far, and it really brings on a point that even if you get second place might not be enough. You might still miss out on those final 10 that we end up picking with the highest scores that we get from all 8 of these qualifiers. So if you're in a position where you're definitely not in first, something big needs to happen, then yeah, maybe you do need to go for the griefing, or maybe you do need to go for the third party potential that you're able to rock with the rest of your squad. Because I mean, it doesn't really matter as much even if you do well, you still need to pass up the team that's in front of you. So maybe you go in, really look for their names in the kill feed, try to deduce, hey, where are they rotating towards? What sort of loot areas are they going to do? Are they also going for the third party? So need to keep all that in mind to try to get them out early so they can't earn any substantial amount of points to really push them further than you already are. So that might be something that we see come out. Of course, a lot of these players like to play really safe. So we'll have to see how that sort of plays out. And Team Haunt at this point, I do believe that they are in a very good position to drop 2 games if they need to. So maybe they are going to go ahead and play passively, just trying to coast in through the rest of that finish. But in the end, we'll have to see coming into game 6.
Yeah, and I mean, even that brings up a potential point. Like, if they feel, let's say they feel confident in the points that they have scored, maybe it creates a situation where they play a little bit more loose, not necessarily like chill and like laid back, but like maybe you take like their aggressive play style, or what seems to be an aggressive play style. It might just be like the skill level of the lobby from their perspective, but maybe you take that aggressive play style and like slam down on the gas pedal and then just push everyone. Like, don't care. We've already got some like solid games behind us. Let's just fly around. You never know. You might find a situation where, I don't know, like Twitch Rivals, one team ends with 20 exiles and a win. You never know. It could be a thing. Just for a little bit of clarity, I'm looking over at our production chat. We had a server game crash, so we're waiting a little bit longer. Bear with us. We're going to get jumped into the game, but they had like a server went down, so we're working on that. So we'll have a little bit of talk, a little bit of discussion. I mean, I look good. I already know that. OSK looks pretty good. He's got the shades on.
Oh, thank you, man.
So, at very least, you got something to look at. You know what I mean?
Yeah, see, unlike you, I'm using these shades out of necessity, not just to look cool, because I literally have sun in my eyes, and it is not a fun time. I'm definitely going to have to invest into a curtain of some kind, some blackout maybe. I'm not really sure what's going to have to adjust, but in any case, we can talk a lot about Spellbreak here while we get those lobbies sorted out. So, Crashy, I know you're a big builder. I know you like to experiment with all these talents. What are some newer builds you're looking to see that maybe down the line we can see sort of do well in this new meta we find ourselves in? I know, for example, that ambidextrous isn't quite showing up as much as we like. I know foresight isn't quite showing up as much as we like. So maybe you can give us some insight as to what you're running to kind of compensate for all those.
Yeah, I when I'm doing like builds for myself, it's super easy to put together a build for solos, play it out, test it out, and then really like kind of like make a decision. Do I think this is something that has some life? And that's simple. Now, when you're playing squads, it's a little bit different because you have to think about so many different moving parts. Like, does this fit in with a composition? Does it fit in with a certain type of fighting style? But one thing I'm actually really surprised about is like, I more or less anticipated that I didn't expect ambidextrous to be like super good. It looks amazing, right? It sounds amazing. It's a 3 cost. It's just everything about it, but it doesn't really bring the punch that I think a lot of us thought that it might have brought. That said, it adds to the field in a very unique way. It's confusing when you have ambidextrous thrown into the mix. It's unique when you're running it with Spellslinger. It adds utility that otherwise isn't in the game on a class and on a build that otherwise doesn't exist. So I am going to go ahead and throw myself out there a little bit, even though I was like one of the people, like me for myself, I was saying like, Ambi's not that great. I'm surprised we're not seeing at least like more individual players within a team using it, because I think that there's something that they can add there. Like, even if you just want to toss in an alacrity on a build, or you know what I mean? So without having to run a Frostborn, like there's gotta be something there that I can really like, that I expect at some point to see come out from alacrity or from ambidextrous. And more specifically, because I've been messing around with it, I actually really like the 0-3-3 builds with Fervor ambidextrous. You're pretty squishy, and you're trading out like any form of recovery or mind talent just to have it. But I think it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, and building off of that, we of course need to talk about Foresight. This is the talent that Tfal has been telling me, hey man, this is sleeper OP. You got to really look out for this in squads. And also, we've been getting it from a few of our EU squads. I know that Ashen Frost in the community has been trying it out quite a bit, along with his squad. And interestingly enough, in squad scrims that we saw the other day, that Hunt was a part of, by the way, on Friday, they were using it very, very well. There was a clear stretch of time where Ashen Frost, Chris, and I do think Wolf were running it on at least one person, and they like to call it the anti-third party talent, where they're able to use it in the last few circles where maybe there's 3 squads left. And of course, we know in that situation, if you're the last to engage, usually you're going to be the one to sort of take that whole thing. So the way that they're using it is that they can scout out where each of these teams are and play as far away from that engagement as possible. They can sort of see them converge up on the northern side, and then they'll be down here towards the south to try to stay out of that initial engagement. And it actually worked quite well for them. As I did mention, they did have a nice 3-win streak using that to their advantage. So definitely something that we have to keep in mind coming into these future qualifiers. So there's definitely a lot of utility that each of these talents bring. Of course, Vigor we're seeing on day 1. Ambi we're seeing a little bit out of Speary in those early games that we had today. But that's very interesting that you mentioned the 0-3-3 build. I think I've seen that quite a few times going into my public lobbies here. I think I've been seeing that quite a bit on Tempest. People are trying to figure out whether or not taking Spellslinger is going to be more useful or not. And I think maybe if you're running sort of a fire offhand or a toxic offhand, maybe you don't need the Spell Slinger, or maybe you don't need the focus mana. That Squall is enough for you, or you know that you're not really going to be looking to play long range. You just want to dive right in and get that quick close range damage. And I think Combust on an offhand fire with Tempest along with Fervor to keep your movement up, it might be actually pretty useful.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I've run it a couple times, like the 0-3-3 build, a couple times on Conduit. I think it's fun. I mean, there's some unique things you can do with it. I made a video where I played I think I just played a Clash game, but I played what was it? I was playing Spellslinger, Scav, and Ambidextrous on Stone Shaper, and that was fun too because it was like I would have like my stone and I would have like an offhand frost, and I would like look for entry damage. Or if I just had like my flash freeze up, if it wasn't like me swapping in and out, like I would pop a flash freeze when I'm close to someone, and then I would like swap over to fire. And so you're a much like squishier, less mobile version of a Stone Shaper, but you kind of cover your bases with Spellslinger and Ambidextrous. Like you bring a lot to the table. Like if you're offhanding a Frost when you're playing Ambi, you have Alacrity, so more mobility. If you're offhanding a Fire, you get more leeway with your fireballs because of Combust. So it was an interesting build. Do I think something like that can hold its own in Battle Royale, in trios, or a solo environment? I don't know. I feel like that's much more for the players to kind of like dive into and discover. Recovery is recovery. Like it's hard to get recovery. So I think that always comes to the forefront of the discussion when we talk about Ambidextrous. But at very least, something like a talent like Ambidextrous, it's very fun. It's very unique. It opens the door for new and unique builds. But I don't know. I think it's going to come down to if and when the right player tries the right build and finds the right play style for it to really make it work.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of time to sort of figure that one out. I know we've had the same 15 talents, I believe. We have 5 in each category. Yeah, the same 15 talents have been a part of the game since, was it beginning of alpha? I know beginning of beta for sure, but might have been alpha too. I forget however long it goes. My boomer brain is really getting in the way of me here. But in any case, I know we've had those for a while. People have had a long time to really focus on what's meta, and they really haven't been changed either. I mean, even Vital Stone, Recovery, Thirsty. I mean, Recovery was touched a little bit, but I mean, there's very little that's changed in the way of talents. And now that we have patch 1.2, throwing in 3 new ones, throwing in some balance changes that some were seeing and some weren't, there's definitely going to be a period of time where everyone's still figuring stuff out, as we saw earlier today. I know Team Heathens were really trying to figure out if these experimental builds could work. I say experimental because we're running Fortitude as a 2 cost. We were running Ambidextrous at one point along with Spellslinger. So maybe we do go for the multiple elements. Maybe we do go for that initial engage where you have to hit me an extra time to really do any damage. And I think it's going to take a little bit of time for everyone to kind of get their feet wet and figure out what exactly is going to be the best going into these tournaments. And of course, I can definitely see down the line if recovery gets touched, if it does get nerfed, if it does have its cost increase, or even the way that it works reworked. I can definitely see ambidextrous being a part of this conversation, along with thirsty and potentially escapist if it gets touched again.
Yeah, and speaking of escapists, I mean, that can segue me into another small discussion. I mean, obviously, we're still waiting to hear about the game. I think they're about to jump in any second now.
Yeah.
But escapist is, I mean, the buff on escapist, not to mention the fact that it just fits in well as a 1-cost talent. I didn't look at that talent prior to 1.2 and really find any use. It's like, okay, it's smatted move speed.
Yeah.
But the question is why? Like, why run that over any other potential like set of talents? And the simple question now is like, one, it's a good talent because it got some good buffs. It's not just like it gives you that flat move speed, it gives you that, the move speed when you take damage, but it fits in with builds that just need one more point. And so you're gonna see a lot of the runic fervor going into escapist build. And the cool thing about that build is, like, for lack of a better like term for categorizing that build, that's just a fast build. It is a very fast build.
Yeah.
You have 2 rune charges, so you're physically mobile. Your mobility is physically faster. You have more room, more runes to do things with. You're increasing your spellcast speed, so you're attacking very quickly, and then you're moving quickly. Like that build, that 2-3-1 build is what I would see is like probably one of the more damaged focus builds. The whole point is to be very fast, very loose, have a couple of rune charges, get in, do your damage, get out. And that can be played. I mean, we're seeing that played on Tempest. We're seeing that played a little bit on Pyro, and we're seeing it played on like Toxicologist. And I think that's pretty good. It's pretty good. I've actually even played that on Stone Shaper, and it felt like the old 2-2-2 Stone Shaper build before the Fervor nerf, but obviously you don't have recovery. But still, I mean, pretty solid build.
Yeah, it definitely seems pretty solid. And guys, thank you all for your patience. As you've seen, we've been waiting long enough for the sun to move out of my eyes, so that's a nice change. So we can ditch the sunglasses. No sun getting into my eyes today, and we are just about ready to get into Game 6. We're queuing up. We're getting right back. I appreciate you joining us for the OSK Crashy podcast. We'll be right back here next week. And of course, getting right back in these games. Let's talk about some of these teams here. Some of these names I haven't seen in a while. Like, I know we have Roaming Gnome, one of the biggest supporters here in our community with all the gifted subs and donations he's been coming out. You probably see his name quite a bit there in that little box, and he's actually doing pretty good with Go Big or Go Gnome here. I do believe that they're definitely not in our top 5 or anything like that, but definitely doing some good work there in the middle of the pack. I would also like to point out that we do have Troll Equality. Again, they showed up yesterday in qualifier number 1. Didn't quite have the best showing. Again, I've said it 2 times today. They did have a teammate sub out, and Solar Bear was able to fill in for the latter part of that. So I'm glad to see that they have their number 1 team that can really hop in with all the strength that they need. So great job to them. And some new names that I'm seeing today. We do have Heathens really show themselves out here. Bubble Chasers. We have Wogheart's Hizzards. I hate that name so much. I can't ever say it. And
I'm leaving that to you.
Yeah, and a nice young star with his squad. One wonderful. I have such a hard time against him in our in the public lobbies. I'm glad to see he's out here getting the practice in, getting the competition on with his team, 50 Gold Gaming Canada and Red Hits. Any names that stick out to you, Crashy, coming off the launch? Anyone you've been seeing in public lobbies you'd like to point out?
I mean, yeah, I've run into death more times than I'm happy to admit, but also Cozy. I mean, Cozy's a very, very good player. It's funny. I've seen KDA, but, and I mean, this is no slight to him. I just don't know much about him or her for that matter. I mean, I'm sure somebody knows, but I really don't know much. But I've run into Speary, Cozy a couple times, BNAG, King Ryzen, and Mike Wazowski. I see them all the time. But yeah, there's a good host of players or a good cast of players here that we have that I actually don't know. And that's always pretty exciting for me because I get to tell the story of like learning about them. Like we have a few console players that are playing today. That's awesome. And that's kind of luckily capable with the crossplay, in squads as opposed to solos where, we're kind of locked into a single platform. But yeah, it's pretty fun. It's pretty fun to be able to pay attention to and see how some of these teams are doing. Again, Troll Equality doing really well. I've seen Hermias Mora's name in game, but other than that, I don't know much about that roster either. So it's really fun to be able to pay attention and build that storyline and be able to talk about how their performances are doing.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm really glad, again, Troll Equality able to bring in Solar Bear for the full 8. I myself have had my few times against him in public. I can tell you guys, he's absolutely cracked. And I'm really, really happy he's able to make himself out here. Now, we are going to go ahead and drop into game number 6 here very shortly. We do have confirmation. We are in the correct lobby. At long last, we're able to get into our next match, game number 6, out of game 5, of course. Again, we are taking the best 6 out of 8 that we are playing today. So 2 free games for you to do badly in. You don't have to worry about your score all that much, but as long as you stay consistent for those 6, you'll be doing just fine. Again, getting in here very soon. I do believe we're about to switch off camera. Crashy, I'm so excited to see if anyone's going to be playing aggressive in the early game. What do you think we're going to be getting ourselves into?
I feel like this is something that will probably develop over time. Like I was talking about, like maybe like starting to like force a drop on your enemies that you're really wanting to take out. I feel like it's too early. I don't know. And I could be totally wrong. This may be something that never develops, but I think that at a certain point, teams are going to feel the pressure to remove the big hitters of their qualifier as early as possible. And that the unpredictability of that is the crazy part about that is like, okay, we know Haunt loves to land at Bogmore, right? What if more than one team has the same thought? Like, hey, listen, guys, we're not really doing well against them in the mid game. They've been rotating in, wiping us out. Like, I think it's best if we drop on them. Well, the irony about that is that there could be like a level of unpredictability where like more than one team does the same thing at the same time. So it's, again, this may be nonsense, right? I could be just completely spitballing here. Nobody ever does it. It's too much out of their comfort zone. Or this could be a realistic possibility. That said, we're in game right now, and they have Bogmore to themselves. So I don't know. A part of me feels like it's a little wild to face off against this team. And it's kind of like doing the same thing and expecting different results, right? Like so far, this team is doing the same thing, and they're getting the same result. And that's great. But what about everybody else in the lobby? So it's just something to think about. Food for thought there.
Yeah, I remember there being a team back in pre-alpha called Bogmore PD, and it looks like Haunt's taken over that old homage there, as they are going to take a Bogmore for themselves. Mana Vault or no Mana Vault, that's a lot of loot to go around, and I'm sure they'll be up to epic rarity very soon. King Ryzen and Mike Wazowski, I don't know if they're trying to find more loot or if they're trying to find early fights. Either way, do have a bit of talents on their sides here. King Ryzen just missing the jump there, but we'll be getting right into some rotations, I'm sure. A little bit of a slower start. We did see a few early exiles, but for the most part, we still have 36 players left. Not really any action to be had from our observers today, so it's going a little bit slower than I thought it initially would. We'll have to see if there's any action opening up. We do see Wonderful in the kill feed, so maybe a fight over there. Let's see where they're at.
Yeah, Rush Frog, same thing, just taking out any of the teams that land near them. It's all that early pursuit. You already see that a couple of exiles coming out from Rush Frog. So more damage, more points, more kills, the usual coming out from a team like Haunt or just any of these teams that are fighting off early. And we do see Wonderful now. So he's going to be getting into a fight. His teammate getting very low. I believe that's Red. Can't recall the full name, and it's really a little bit hard for me to see. But yeah, so Red getting a little bit low here, but they're kind of disengaging a bit or just repositioning together. And now you see Game in Canada is going to be pushing himself forward. Red finding a bit of a reset, and Wonderful again playing the conduit. This is the play style that you can pull from this. If you're looking for information, if you're curious about getting into competitive and maybe you're a conduit player, watch the play style from some of these players. They're going to go ahead and find that exile. Yeah, nice. I mean, straight out of the stealth, but the play style from Wonderful is not to overexert himself. That said, Red hits, he's going to get disrupted here, so he's going to have to find some kind of a situation where he can help his teammate. But ultimately, the goal from this player in this role is to really stay on the edge, put out the damage that he needs to do, support his teammates, and then initiate and get aggressive when he needs to. Game in Canada finding that disruption, and now it looks like Wonderful is going to step on the gas just a little bit here.
Yeah, and it looks like he's doing such a great job of keeping the pressure up there. One more Stone Slam will do it, or just a few more Lightning Bolts. Excellent stuff from Wonderful to go ahead and seal out that exile. And he really is going to have to be the carry player right here, as he is the only one with a belt and an epic rarity at that, so definitely need to drink up all of those potions. And having to rotate off towards his teammates here, as it looks like they are being exiled, having to toss a boulder, but it's just not going to be enough, not there in time, as Red hits will go ahead and be disrupted by Zumuzon, I think. I'm not sure how to pronounce that one, but I'll definitely do my best. This player is getting very, very low, though. One Stone Slam will do it, or just a few more Lightning Bolts. Going to be some easy work for Wonderful, needing to keep an eye on his teammate Gaming Canada to make sure there's no one coming from behind. Zoom Muzan is going to go ahead and get down. Wonderful going to pop an extra rune with his Overload skill. Now we can go ahead and get at least one of our teammates up. Unfortunately, like we said, Red Hit's going to be down. So a two-man team left here. Going to have to play for placement just a little bit and hopefully not get into too difficult of some engagements here. Now we will see Maria Martel going to go ahead and find that knowledge potion. It looks like we are doing a decent bit of funneling, and now we have BNAG going right into an engagement with Dirty Mike and the boys.
Yeah, Solar Bear getting an exile onto Bud God and Chazzy as well. Now Speary really stepping on the gas. King Ryzen, that's going to be who they're facing off against. So King Ryzen already kind of getting down a little bit early. We see BNAG really wants to find this pickup. Mike Wazowski finding a bit of space for himself as well. And these two teams, they might have slowed down into a bit of a reset. But again, King Ryzen so low. If the aggression comes out from Speary and his team, it might be too overwhelming to deal with. And BNAG, I mean, he's rocking the 2 charges of Featherfall at the moment. I'm not sure how I feel about that. So I'm assuming he had a knowledge potion at some point or another, but they're just trying to pull away from the situation. We can clearly tell this is not their fight here.
Yeah, and I can tell you right now, the Featherfall is definitely just trying to get some PTSD into the lobby from the old aim assist days. As you can tell some of these players, as soon as they see Featherfall with lightning, it's like, oh no, we're up against this again. And even though it is nerfed, there is a little bit of that thought still in the brain there. As Sputnik is going to go ahead and try to kite as much as possible, it's going to be a little bit difficult against this particular player. Those fireballs are coming very, very close. And if it's a Pyromancer, that's going to be very, very difficult. That might even be Rush Frog coming out on the western side of the zone. I can't quite tell who exactly it is, but it is the Baron skin. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. That's actually Hermaeus Mora going to go ahead and shock him out. And now we see just Blitz, the last member of this team, just going to try to get anything done as we have Steel Mets on the chase, trying to land any sort of stone. It does go over the hills in this particular environment, except for apparently that one. He's going to skate his way over. And let's see if he can catch up to him, Crashy.
A 1, a 2, a 3? Are they going to be able to find it? Not going to be able to just yet. Hiding out in the maze, but listen, it's an inevitability. It doesn't matter how much time it takes. OSK, this player is dead. Get him. Do it. I want to.
There we go.
There we go. We know what we're talking about in this game. This player falls down. Unfortunate. But look at this, man. It's just like I listen, OSK, I'm tired of talking about Haunt. They need to stay out of the kill feed for like at least a couple of seconds, but they don't. They find every elimination in their path. We got 3 just on Rush Frog alone. And again, rocking that same build. Listen, I want to put the emphasis on here because it's talking about the strategy behind this build. He's got Finders Keepers. He's almost full scrolled up, and he's been feeding every body scroll to his teammates. I love this. It's a strong build. You have that frontline potential, but you're also just providing a service to your teammates in pursuit of the trajectory to win. You're building that trajectory just by being a strong player that can actually feed into that support, those talents, those numbers that your teammates need. And the third party coming in from Haunt here, as they are going to be jumping into what seems like a full pursuit. Rush Frog actually getting a lot of damage coming his way very quickly. That lightning strike is going to slam down, finding himself shocked, but believe that they're going to be able to turn this one around now on the bridge. Lots of damage coming out from Rush Rock. He's just constantly playing this front side position. Now he can back himself up. Hermaeus Mora actually getting some disruptions and exiles in the kill feed as well, as it looks like Rush Frog has a lot of pressure, but he's always playing right off the hip of death, and that is the fight that they're looking for. King Ryzen's going to go down early in this one, and Rush Frog taking the majority of the damage at the very beginning of this engagement, but that does not matter when he knows how to position properly. You see that downed enemy as well, and Rush Frog, Death, and Cloud are looking to clean this one up.
Yeah, and he saw the excellent knowledge of the elemental interactions, lighting the dragon fires on his flame wall to go ahead and get that extra bit of damage that sealed out the exile onto King Ryzen. Cloud going to go ahead and take out BNAG, and now there's just one more target to go. We're fighting on these towers here. The winner of these towers will be the winner of this fight, but it looks like it's quite a bit of kiting coming out from our last teammate here from Mike Wazowski. Mike doing his absolute best to make sure that they do not go ahead and seal out that exile. We're getting thirsted off is Rush Frog, and now looking for BNAG, I would imagine, is they're going to be their second thirst. I think Mike's going to want to sort of disengage here and not really go for any saving of BNAG, and yes, that will be the case. Cloud goes ahead and thirsts. Lots of loot going around for Team Haunt, and lots of fleeing going around for Mike Wazowski. Now we're going to rotate off to Team Troll Equity, getting into an engagement of themselves, starting it off on the right foot, and Solar Bear going to go ahead and delete all of that armor and running the Chronomaster of all builds. This is one of the builds that he loves to run in public lobbies. We'll have to see if it works in competitive lobbies, but he does so much work without any extra movement coming from any other rune that I think it could actually work out pretty well for him on the Frostborn. We'll have to see how it ends up in this competitive environment, but so far working out pretty well for him.
Yeah, very unique build. I mean, we're not running Harmony. We're running Scavenging in squads. We have Recovery. So, I mean, I'm not saying that like Scavenging is bad in squads, but it is a unique take on the 2-cost body talent, right? In this type of situation where, you know, you do have to full wait for that, but there's value to be had there. Now, the most important thing that I think we can talk about in terms of Frostborn meta and Frostborn talents, Frostborn builds, is just the lack of Harmony. I mean, that's definitely very interesting. He's willing to take that risk, which means that he's playing with the knowledge of him being CCable on his own Alacrity in the back of his mind. But look at this fight. It is going to break out. Hermias Mora kind of like taking that position right next to him. They have a couple of backline players, so you see Steel actually has to be that stone shaper that really gets in the thick of the fight. So I have to imagine that the majority of the strategy that comes out of this team composition is looking for big damage and then hard initiating, or potentially looking to kite together as a team. So we're still watching Solar Bear. Looks like this fight has kind of like peeled into a bit of a slow moment as, again, I look at the kill feed and we have Haunt just plastering the battlefield with their exiles.
Yeah, they're really doing some good work here. That's got to be, I think, at least 4 exiles onto Rush Frog and even more onto Cloud and Death. They are absolutely tearing this lobby up. As we can see, Cloud has 3, Rush Frog has at least 4, and I'm sure Death has some in there as well, at least 1. And now we see Cloud just doing some work on the conduit, really laying down the damage as he has full movement between the Fervor, the Runic Fluency, the Escapist, and now look at the rune swapping going on. Not the swapping, but the recharging, getting Speary out of the sky, and now trying to follow up with a little bit of fire. Gonna opt to reset right in front of this man. He has no fear, as now he can just back right up. Going to go ahead and Shadow Step out of the way there. Going to lay down a bit of CC of his own. Get right up close and personal with the fire. Not quite sealing out the Exile just yet, but he's not far off as he lays down more shots with the zone closing in on this enemy team. That's a lot of damage coming out. Rush Frog on the front side of things, trying to seal it out himself. And it looks like we'll be sealing out the Exile right here. Death going to go ahead and disrupt Solar Bear. And Crashy, we're down to just 1 squad remaining for Team Haunt. And they are so close to getting this done. 1 shock will do it. And there's actually just a little bit more as Steel Mets goes down. And I think they're going to get the rest of Troll Equity. This might be over quickly.
A dominating performance coming out from Haunt here in Qualifier 2 in total, as they're just jumping through the field. I mean, constantly just fight after fight after fight. We can't even look away. We've talked about it over and over and over again. I mean, what more do you say? I mean, they're really just, I mean, they're kind of they're making every region their home, right? I mean, at this point.
Apparently, I guess we better move on to Europe. Get one of them in Europe and do even better. I guess they don't even need to. But as we can see, I mean, they're just absolutely dominating. That might have been their best game yet. Actually, they had so many exiles, and this is kind of a weird trend that I'm seeing from all of these NA players. Is that yes, we have some that do pretty well on the NA side of things in their home territory, and then they just hop over to EU and do even better. It makes 0 sense to me, but hey, if you can seal out the exiles and the damage, I mean, I guess that's just what you got to do. I mean, I really don't know any other way to put it. They're defying all logic here, taking first place multiple times in this tournament, even on an off region. So explain that one to me, Crashy. I got no answers for you.
I don't know, man. All I can say is like we were watching a good bit of Cloud there again, and I was really enjoying it. And I brought this up the last time because you can really see where he fits in that fight. One thing to note was Death was actually playing Stone Shaper that game, but still it's the same. They have that same strategy. They send 2 people in. Usually it starts with Rush Frog. I've actually noticed it more than a couple times. It's almost deceptive, especially when you're watching one perspective where Rush Frog goes in and he takes so much damage and it's like, oh God, this could be so dangerous. And then what does he do? He just like S-keys his way out slowly, looking left, looking right, backs himself to a corner, has his teammates on his sides, Death is just usually free reigning around, because at that point, all of their cooldowns, all of their damage have gone into Rush Frog. He resets by himself, he's chilling, and then he just walks back in casually, and they just wipe the whole field. Like, I've seen it literally 3 times since we've been spectating them. It's pretty impressive at the fact that, like, he doesn't mind just literally walking in and just taking a bunch of damage, and then he just, like, skips his way out of there. The cool thing, though, is in that very last fight that we were watching when we were on Cloud, is that he was actually in between. Cloud was standing, or, like, hovering, levitating, in between Death and Rush Frog, and he was just, like, looking around. Like, he would turret this way, and then he would whip back this way, and he would turret this way. He would, like, lightning strike over here, and then he would, like, initiate and start using fireballs. It's like, dude, he just, like, it's the perfect showcase of what that conduit with offhand fire build with runic fluency and fervor can do. It's like you just have so much freedom, so much mobility, so much damage, and you're just, like, dynamically, like, playing the field. Like, oh, does Death need me? Okay, cool. I'm gonna look over at Death. Does Rush Frog need me? All right, I'm gonna peel back and look at him. It's just such a good setup and such a good way to team fight.
Yeah, he's doing a really good job of playing as, I would say, the disruption member of that team. So we see Rush Frog constantly taking the front line, like you mentioned, and then baiting and switching to allow Death to circle around. If you can draw the aggro of the enemy team and get them to follow you into this trap, and then you have Death just come around and sort of slap you in the back with his outbreak, or even just land up a frost shot. I mean, it's easy money. It really is. And then you have Cloud over the top of that, just laying any sort of residual damage that he can with Conduit. We know it can really ramp up after a few shots. And even if he can just lay down a bit of CC to allow Death or Rush Frog to sort of cover for that and really follow up to get an Exile out, and especially if they can target one member at a time like they're so good at doing. I mean, that's a really good point that you bring up, that even though we do like to think of these teams as front line, behind enemy line, and back line, there really is sort of a mix between disruption, baiting, and switching for your more mechanically oriented player, and just letting them do all the work for you.
Yeah, I mean, either way, it's definitely working in their favor. And I was hoping at somewhere along there, like at some point in there, we would actually jump into Death's perspective, because I wanted to see what build he was running. I mean, I know he's running Stone Shaper, and he's still playing the same playstyle. I'm watching him go in on those fights. He's not kind of like playing it like slow, but we've already seen a good build diversity coming out from the Stone Shapers that we've seen in this qualifier specifically. So I was curious. I don't know if he's going to be running it again. And maybe that's, I mean, think about it. We're on EU now. We've seen players lean into like Pyromancer or Stone Shaper when they're playing on like higher ping. So that might just be the whole philosophy there. He may just be playing like a, I don't know, a 3-2-1 build on Stone Shaper, or maybe he's just playing like an even 2-2-2 build, or maybe he's playing the Vigor build. I don't know. In any case, he's still keeping that fight style up, you know, working with Rush Frog. And yeah, I don't know, to kind of segue into just talking about another team, Troll Equity, I'm seeing a lot coming from Hermias Mora, or Hermias Mora. I don't know how to say that name, but in any case.
No, you're right.
Yeah,
I played Skyrim. It's Hermias Mora.
Okay, cool. So I'm seeing a lot come from them. I mean, they're actually doing pretty well. I don't know what position they're in. Let me see if I can see. So yeah, they're sitting pretty high up there. I think right now, if I'm reading it correctly, if it's been updated, they're sitting in about that 3rd place position. So they're keeping themselves doing pretty well. It's like they're like continually fighting for a little bit more and more consistency, and that's what practicing and playing in these tournaments is all about, right? Like you're constantly looking to improve, like to get to that haunt, to get to that UT level, because we're seeing. I mean, let's be real. What are we like 5 games in now? We're going into 6.
We're going into 7 at this point.
Okay, so we're going into game 7. That means we've seen 6 solid games where Haunt has been. I mean, we've already seen it. Like, I don't even need to say anything more. So that is like the point that these teams are fighting to get to that level of consistency. And realistically, I feel like Troll Equity's like been doing well. They're not dominating, so it's a little harder to talk about their consistency. And for the sake of saying, it's the same thing for Dirty Mike. Like they're doing very well. They've stayed mostly consistent. They're keeping themselves on there, and it takes like a couple of pop-off games, like a couple of really big games, that changes the narrative from me saying like, "Wow, Haunt is doing so well," to saying something like, "Oh wow, Troll Equity is doing super well." So it's just those little bitty things. Like if they can pull in some more of those big performances on top of some of the consistency that they're already laying down, that's what changes the narrative.
Yeah, definitely. You make a good point. And another point to be made here is that now that we're 6 games deep, going into game number 7, we're past the point where or we're getting into the point where your two weakest games are starting to be dropped. So it's going to be interesting to figure out, are these teams really going to be turning on the aggression? Do you really go for those risky plays? Because I can tell you right now, if you're not second place or higher, or if you're not convincing enough of a second place, like if you're not close enough to the top team that you feel like you can really get into the finals at this point, you have to go aggressive. You absolutely have to, because there, like I said, going into the finals, we have 8 qualifiers, only 10 teams are getting in. That's less than 2 teams per qualifier. So you really need to show up. You really need to throw all your options down, and you really need to go for the highest amount of exiles that you possibly can get, as exiles and damage. That's 2/3 of the equation, baby. And you need to go ahead and get as many points as you can.
Look at that. We've already touched down, and wonderful red hits in game in Canada have all fallen to the hands of King Ryzen. That's already so huge, OSK.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest news that we'll see all day. 50 gold dropping out so early, as now we see Ramaraparu and Puffy Penguin going to go ahead onto another one of our squads, and that's another early exile. And that's kind of what I was alluding to here, is that we're starting to see more aggression from these teams early on. That's exactly what you need. You need to get that high amount of exiles. You need to start showing yourself in this kill feed, or you're not going to get any value out of your games here today. You're just going to go home with a sad look on your face saying, I didn't make finals, and getting a lot of exiles. Maybe you can write something home about it. Maybe you can get into the finals that way. So we'll have to see how this unfolds for the rest of the match. Looks like we're already into the mid game, as we only have 30 contestants left. It's not even the first zone yet. So we'll have to see how this unfolds, Crashy.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. I think you bring up a really great and valid point that, you know, the time to be conservative is definitely early on in the event, right? Like you're constantly, like, this is no secret that you have to play for exiles and you have to play for damage. So it's not like a placement heavy tournament where when you get to the end of the event, you're trying to close the gap by playing for placement and adding exiles in. It's very balanced in the sense that you kind of always know what you need, but as you approach these last 2 games, it's like you have to turn that dial even further. Like, yeah, okay, cool, we've had some good placements, yeah, cool, we've had some games where we had a good amount of exiles, but it's like, hey, look, we really need to close the gap, or we really want to throw our points really high up there. We need to just W key. Like, we have to step on the gas, we have to push every single team we see, we have to play with a lot of conviction. The communication needs to be better and more clear than ever. It's time to really push it. And that's something that I think, especially for teams that aren't already sitting at the top, just has to happen. Like, you don't have a choice. Like, if you're playing to win at all, sometimes taking the riskiest fight in the game is the only decision you have. And that's what I think we're going to start to see out of these last couple of games.
Yeah, and speaking of playing to win, we're already seeing some adjustments coming out from Speary himself. We saw him running the experimental build with Ambidextrous, Fortitude, and Spellslinger already swapped off to Cloud's preferred build as Conduit, Runic Fluency, Fervor, and Escapist, along with the same offhand Gauntlet, just missing the Shadow Step out of that final build, but it looks like we're starting to see a little bit of imitation coming out, and that might just be the best way to do it. We'll have to see how that works out for him later on in this match, but look at all these enemies here. We're about to see a third-party situation. It's not about to be pretty. We see Xanrin already getting into the middle of an engagement himself. No shots are going to be connecting so far, and it looks like they might rotate off, as this might be just a little bit more than they can chew. It's going to be interesting to see how they finish off today. Looks like repositioning for another snipe. I'll have to see if that works out for him. And he sees just a little peek over the edge, but again, no connection's going to be made. He'll have to rely on Starzizer to really get in there and disrupt things.
Yeah, what an interesting fight, because it just feels like you said, maybe bit off a little bit more than they can chew, but not from like a negative standpoint, right? There was just a lot going on there, and you can even see it, like Mike Wazowski using one of those safeguard potions now, really kind of finding that big reset that they're looking for, but they're ready to go in. I mean, this is a team that we're talking about is in that consistency range where they do need a big game if they want to look to close the gap, and that might be what we're looking to see here. King Ryzen does take a lot of damage very early on, going to be rocking that Stone Shaper classes. Now they're pulling themselves closer to the zone here. Mike Wazowski's going to invis, unfortunately getting kind of caught up on that post there, not going to be able to stay invis, but we'll see if this actually does break into a full fight. I mean, we're looking at King Ryzen deep in the zone. I'm not sure what's going on out there, but that might be something that develops into a full fight. BNAC taking a little bit of damage as well, and this is the engagement. Like, this is absolutely going to set in. This is what they need to find. Oh, Mike Wazowski taking a big Iceland shot there again. This is Starzizer. That fight that pulled off that first castle we saw just a couple of minutes ago, or just a minute ago, has fully come to fruition as BNAG actually getting exiled. This is not going to be a game for the leaderboards for them.
No, definitely not. That's definitely a bit of a hard pill to swallow there. I think that happened to them earlier on in Game 6, if I remember correctly, and it just looks like a repeat of what just happened. Now, it'll be interesting to see if they can sort of drag this out. Mike Wazowski definitely has the best tool in the toolkit here to sort of kite out, get away from all the action. Definitely needs to play a whole lot safer, play for placement at this point, and maybe for some third-party disruptions. That's really the only way I see them getting into any sort of finalist position. But we haven't even seen Haunt just yet. It looks like they might just be hanging in the wings for right now. I'm not quite sure what's going on their side of things, but I haven't seen them yet in the kill feed. So maybe they're just a little bit late getting to the action. Maybe there's something else going on. I'm not quite sure, but we'll have to find out later, as Sputnik is going to go ahead, lay down some residual damage, and really nothing doing coming into this mid-game. 24 people left. That's about 8 squads, if my math is correct. And here we go. Finally getting into some action. He's CC'd off the rip, but we're looking for that Shadow Step outbreak, and there's number 1, looking for number 2 and number 3.
Yeah, looks like Sputnik, roaming gnome, go big or go gnome. They're trying to do just that. It looks like Cozy been cleaning up another team on a different section of the map as well. This Sputnik coming out, the outbreak damage is going to be too much for this player to handle. That's going to be Steel Mets. Unfortunately, just kind of landing himself in a tough situation. Speary, Cozy, all in the kill feed. And this has been a scrap of a game. Again, I think we're seeing some of that gas being turned on by a few of these teams here. And I'm going to say something that might be a bit controversial here. I'm not even sure if Haunt is in this game.
You know what? I think according to our production guy, he is in. And there it is. Finally.
All right.
Rush Frog is in this one, so at least we have one.
I wasn't leaning on the fact that it was like a strategic decision for them. I just really wasn't sure if we had seen them. Again,
it's fair. It's fair.
I have some of the worst memory in the world. My short-term memory is terrible. We may have even watched them early on. I don't even know. But regardless, Speary, Mike Wazowski going to get disrupted at the hands of Speary, and this is a big fight coming down here at the Cathedral as KDA has no shields, but he's not short on the ability to do some damage. Unfortunately for him, he's lacking a ton of knowledge. He does not have like almost any scrolls, but Cozy, Speary, they're looking to clean up. Mike Wazowski, King Ryzen are going to go down again. They really didn't have a great game on their hands here, so it's not that big a deal, but look at this. Rush Frog, Cloud, they're looking to push into this situation. Speary's going to go down at the hands of Cloud, and KDA and Cozy doing whatever they can to scrap a little bit here, but I think this one's going to be a pretty cut and dry engagement, as it looks like Death and Cloud, Rush Frog are all over this team here.
Yeah, and that's the name of the game here. We have Death, just raining death from above here. Changing up the skins, too, to make it a little bit more inconspicuous here is Rush Frog. It looks like we're rocking is that new wolf skin, or am I tripping it? No, that's the Demon Eye skin. I remember this one. All right. So looks like they're just pushing on into this last little member of this team. Not sure what he's going to be able to do to kite away, as we do have more than one. And there it is. Death going to rain that boulder down onto Cozy. And now we're sitting pretty with 3 squads remaining and 2 of them already in an engagement. This is going to be an easy time. Whoa, what a snipe from Solar Bear as he's looking for the last exile onto this opponent. And there it is. 2 snipes for 2 exiles. Is Solar Bear onto Roaming Gnome and Blitz, and Steel Mets cleaning up Sputnik. Now this is going to be Rush Frog squad with Hunt just dropping right in for the third party.
Yeah, jumping in for the third party. One thing I was going to say is that, this might be an opportunity for Troll Equity to make a big impact on the leaderboard. Unfortunately, it looks like Rush Frog, Death, and Cloud, Team Hunt coming in to shut that down as fast as they can. But I have to say, this is one of the, even if, let me think about this for a second. Even if Haunt wins this game, it may not even be one of their highest performing games. Like, they have had a couple of games where they got third and second place, but I feel like I've only seen them get like a handful of exiles this game. I mean, just looking at the perspective of Death here, he only has 1 exile to his name. So winning the game here, great. Is it going to be one of their scoring games? Honestly, they're doing so well. They're playing so consistently. It may not even be. So we'll have to see how that develops. But look at that. Rush Frog, Steel Mets finding that exile, Rush Frog, Death, Cloud, each finding that elimination. They're going to get the exiles. They're going to win the game. But again, I'm not even sure if that one's going to score for them. Like, I really don't know. It probably will just because it's a win. But I don't know how many exiles they had. They maybe had like 5, 6. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
We'll have to see.
Yeah, they came in really late on the action there. I'm with you. I don't even think that one will be scored. Maybe it takes over that one game that they had third place, game 3. Yeah, maybe because I think they had a decent number of exiles there, but in any case, it's a good win for them just playing for the late game. It's another good strategy that they're making. It's like they're playing more passively because they know they can afford to drop 2. And maybe that really is the play. Maybe while they let all these teams go after it when they have to up the aggression, they can just stand back and still hang on to that first placement. So I would bet that's what's going on. Either that or just a little bit unlucky off the drop.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, sometimes it'd be like that. I mean, I think all of us have at least had a game of Battle Royale where you're like, or even this one, this is a good one. You'll drop in, you're like, all right, I'm dropping in hot. I'm going to fight everyone. And then it's like, the hell, dude? Where is everybody? Like, what am I doing? Like, I'm just running around the map like an idiot, just trying to find something. So
you got 3 mana vaults all around you, and you're like, "Where's all the action? Listen, nobody land here."
That was I want to say that was a bit of a bizarre game because it felt like the action was just like hammering away, and yet the people that I expected to be really in the thick of the action weren't really around. Like, I expected like Dirty Mike's team to like really have a solid game, like really push people, but they got kind of taken out early. I was trying to sell the story about troll equity. Oh man, this could be their game. This could be the game that they put a bunch of points on the board. Well, here comes Rush Frog and the team. They just wipe them out really quick. It's like, okay, I don't know what that game. I'm gonna be honest. Like as a caster, as someone that like likes to analyze things, I really don't know what that game did for the standings. I mean, it happened. It was a game, and we got one more. So we'll see. We'll see how this affects everything. So.
Yeah, it's a little bit wild. And as hard as we try to sell these things, you can only sell if people are buying, and it looks like they're not buying today. So we'll have to see how it plays out in game number 8, our last game of the day. Again, 8 total games between all these qualifiers, and the best 6 will be counted. So we'll keep that in mind going into this last little bit of action. And I want to point out that Haunt, despite getting into the action late, they actually picked up 7 exiles. The damage was a little bit low, but they ended up sealing out quite a bit. So we'll have to see how that plays out. Yeah, I think
it was they be like close to like 5 because they even came in one fight like as a third party. So it's like I wasn't even sure if they were going to get like an even 6 kills, but they got 7. Okay, that's more than
I got 7. Yeah, it's pretty wild. And there was another squad that got 7 too. That was the Heathens with KDA, Cozy, and Speary. They did some work too. Finished out in 4th with a little bit more damage, but still picking up 7. So that's good stuff to them. Maybe they'll pick up a nice 2nd place finish. We'll have to see how game 8 plays out for them. And some of these teams need obviously some of it is going to be unreachable at this point, but some of these teams really have the potential to pop off. Maybe if they can drop a 20 bomb, as we saw at one point during your previous event in Twitch Rivals, we did see a 20 bomb come out. So it is possible. We'll have to see if they can pull it around this time around.
Yeah, we will see. There's some big shoes to step into.
That's a big one. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And just for the sake of saying, just to rub salt in the wound for anybody that hasn't landed an event 20 bomb, that was customs. Like they were playing in a full server. I mean, not everybody was the most well versed.
To be fair,
to be fair, it was not the most stacked lobby of competitive Spellbreak. But still pretty cool to see. So I'm really excited, man. It's just from my perspective, to add a little thoughts in the competitive Spellbreak sphere, it's been really fun to see the differences in an event like Twitch Rivals and an event like this, because this is a much higher skill feeling event. It's a different format. I mean, and again, I love Twitch Rivals for what it was, but this is a much higher skill feeling event. It's an event that takes teams and throws them in the thick of things, throws them against Haunt, throws them against UT, and says, hey, look, like this is your chance, show up, and that's fun. Like it's a great experience. Even if you have not your best event, even if you don't make it to the finals, it's a point of growth, and you get to use this experience to take it to the drawing board and say, okay, look, hey, we scrimmed going up to this event. What were we lacking? What did we do wrong? How can we take our practice makes perfect and make it perfect practice makes perfect. So it's a great opportunity, especially this early into the game's life cycle, to like reevaluate, think about the strategies, take a lot of this footage and use it as VOD reviews. Hey, look, man, I want to watch the perspective of Hunt. Like I'm sure some of these guys are streaming. Like, what are they doing? What is the communication like that we can take from them and reapply going forward? So a lot that can be pulled from that.
Yeah, definitely. Make a good point. Even if you're not doing so well, like we mentioned yesterday with Play Safe, even if you don't do so well today, this is a great way to sort of figure out what level you're at and what sort of fundamentals you need to work on, and really just practice some more in scrims, get those comms all ironed out, and maybe a little bit of team compositions and work. Maybe you need to toss up the talents a little bit, some offhand gauntlets, maybe practice a little bit more with your aim, a little bit more with your prediction, a little bit more with your rotation. So we'll have to see. It's just another point of practice that you can work on, as you said. Perfect practice makes perfect, I think, is what the exact thing you said. But anyway, going into game 8 here, I mean, if you're not being aggressive, are you even playing today? Like, this is your final chance to really make your mark, even if it's unreachable for you at this point. I want to see some clips. I mean, our Twitch content has to be worth something. So let's get some nasty snipes out here. Let's get some Tempest going. Let's get some
Bogmore. Land there.
Bogmore, yes.
Like I listen.
Bogmore PD.
Let's go. Do I think that it's actually the strategy? I don't know, but
it'll be fun to watch.
Find out for me. You know what I mean? Like, I'll queue in. Don't make me do it. Like, I'll cast. Oh, look, it's gonna be crashing. OSK dropping in on Bachmore. I mean, I'll do it.
We'll just duo with the Phil.
Don't make me. Yeah. I just want to see it, man. I really do. I really like. Okay. I'm coming from the Fortnite scene. I think this is no secret to anybody. I've casted some tournaments. I've paid attention. But the thing about it is that there's this whole thing that happens in competitive BRs where it becomes a lot of friction about the drop spots. And I feel like we haven't seen too much of that in Spellbreak, or at least I haven't really gotten to experience it. It's those stories that build over time. And
yeah.
You know, when you get in that there's a word I'm leading into, when you get into the territory where one team is looking at the other team and they're like, man, that team really griefed us. That's like, it's those storylines that are like frustrating to pay attention to, but they're also really engaging. Like, is this team griefing for strategy? Are they landing there because they think it's their only chance to put themselves higher on the board by wiping out the team early? Are they doing it just because they're the bottom tier team that doesn't really have an opportunity and they're just trying to cause chaos? Like, can I pull out like a Batman quote and say like, some men just want to watch the world burn? Like, is it like, so it's things like that are like, that is interesting to me. I can't help it. Like, so I don't know. I don't know if a team's going to land at Bogmore. I don't know if a team's going to change up their strategy too much going into the last game. But I think if there was an opportunity or a situation where you would do it, it might be now. So we'll see.
Yeah, and speaking of Watch the World Burn, it's something you can literally do here in Spellbreak. So we'll have to see how that plays out here. There is going to be a little bit of a delay here going into game number 8, as we are experiencing a little bit of technical difficulties on the back end. But sit tight. We're right back with the OSK Crashy podcast here with another topic for you. Talk to me about Gauntlets, Crashy. What are your favorites and why? Or if you want to jump into something else, we got a little bit of time to kill. Go ahead and lay it on me.
All right, I'm gonna segue. I'm gonna cut your point there.
Okay, let's do it.
We know that there's a future gauntlet coming, future class.
Okay, we got some good leads from Crashy out.
Yeah. I mean, so we like Cardell gave us the information, like, and we can speculate. That's fine too. But I more so want to go like a little step further than that. You know, one thing for me, and when patch 1.2 was on the way, I was really interested about was how much of meta shifts will we get from the introduction of a class versus the introduction of talents. And I personally think that you get a much more profound meta shift with the introduction of new talents. I think that it doesn't just create a ripple in terms of like, oh, you can add one more class to solos, or you can play a different class, or there's new element interactions. It's that adding new talents to the game creates a ripple effect for everything that's already in the game. So I do think that you see a much more profound sense of shifting in the meta when talents are added, but it's impossible to know what can happen when they add a new class. I have no idea. I mean, I'm almost want to bite my tongue here. We could really see like the first introduction of a support class. That could be something
Okay.
that this game hasn't seen. We could see the introduction of healing or shielding allies. I mean, we could see the introduction of much more hard CC to the game, which I really hope we don't. Like, I really
That's fair. Let's get more freezes.
If they because the leak was this for anybody that hadn't heard it, or the teaser was, hey, look, we have a class, a gauntlet that's coming out, and it's something that's in the game, but like isn't a class yet, right? So we can run wild with the speculation, but again, my mind goes to a couple things. One of them of which is like a nature gauntlet, right? Well, I used to play this game called Infinite Crisis, and there was a character that like was all about like nature and kind of things, and like one of her abilities was to just like she would just root an enemy. It would just snare them for like 2 seconds. It was a point and click ability.
My goodness,
it
that's a
was
long
so
time.
annoying. It was so broken, and like my mind thinks the same thing. Like, gee, please don't give us a sorcery that just snares someone just for the sake of doing it. You know what I mean? But it's stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, man. I don't know what's going to happen. So it'll be interesting to see what. Oh God,
It's
so scary.
If you're as well versed in the Spellbreak memes as I am, then you know that everyone is looking for that noodle. Is looking for that noodle class, and I have no idea what it could be. But I mean, I'm always a fan of this arcane style of class, and I know that you created one on your own channel a while back. Maybe it's related to that. Who knows? But man, I would just like to like a Spartan laser style with the sorcery. If I can just charge up my bare hand and just really thrust a laser out of it for like 50 damage. I mean, that would be pretty cool to me. It would be cool to watch. Probably not cool to play against or play as, but I mean, it all depends on how they balance it. So I'm really excited to hear that there is a new gauntlet and a new class. It is a new gauntlet, right?
Yeah, I think it's a new. Wait, I have to think back to how
is it a new
he
class,
worded
or is
it.
it just a new gauntlet?
No, I'm pretty sure he said like a new class. Like I'm pretty certain. Like the only thing we don't know. That's the irony. Like the thing about it is he said it's something that we've already seen in the game. I have to recall it word for word, because that could mean that we're just getting a new class with the current existing element. But I'm pretty sure he's just full alluding to the fact that it's, man, I'm about to go look it up. Like I'm about to go watch the footage of it. I'm pretty sure I have it saved in one of my recordings too. So it's like, I'm so curious to hear what exactly is it that they're alluding to. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, because the way I think of it here currently, the way our classes work is that you spawn in with the element corresponding to your class, and that's kind of like your baseline. You can't switch off that gauntlet. You can't do anything else with it. It stays on your hand unless you switch gauntlet slots in your settings. So the way I'm thinking of it is, if it is a new class, then if there's no new gauntlet introduced, then what are you going to spawn in with? Are you going to start choosing what gauntlet you spawn in with? Or is it going to be a whole nother element that we introduce? So yeah, that's kind of where my thinking is.
I think the way that I envision it, it's like it's either a new class that comes with a gauntlet and is an existing element. So like new class, new gauntlet, but it already uses the same element that's already built in. So like my example that I've talked about is like, lava gauntlet uses fire interactions, but it's different. Or we're looking at new class, new gauntlet, new element, like nature introduces some form of interactions with grass and burning and, spreading toxins or something like that. I don't know. Again, like something like with my arcane concept or unarcane concept, it's, again, that's like a whole new class, new element, not really an element. That's the tricky thing about the longevity of this game and like adding in new classes. It's like, it's not like there's just an infinite amount of elements. It becomes like I mean, we could talk.
It's like a different spell class almost.
Yeah, I could talk your ear off about the concept of adding a light and dark gauntlet, because
you don't know how many times I see that in the Spellbreak Discord.
But that's the thing; it's so cool. But when you start conceptualizing it past just saying light and dark, it's really complicated. Like it's really like even myself. Okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna pull my conceptualized brain out in the world, and I'm gonna say like, cool. Okay, light gauntlet. You have a sorcery that heals someone for X amount of HP instantly, right? Like, cool, flash heal, something priest-like or paladin-like from World of Warcraft. And then you have this, it's just light, right? Like you're beaming light shards at someone or something. How do you take that simple concept? It'll work in the game. It's projectile-based. Cool, we can do it. How do you take that and interact it with other elements? Do you is it just a raw empower, like you hit a flame wall and it sparks it up white flames? Like how do you do that? It's possible, but it's very complicated. So that's where my mind goes when we talk about conceptualizing new classes and things that aren't really elements. Like, you can take water and pour it on fire and boom, it extinguishes, right? You can freeze it and boom, it turns into steam. Those are real things that are much more tangible, but you're getting into this like really fantasy like interaction that is just it's very complicated, and it has to make sense. It can't be overpowered. It's hard. It's tough.
Yeah, definitely. I can definitely see a lot of hardships coming in with introducing something completely new like that, especially with all the different interactions. Like, we already have Dragonfire that has a big AoE. We already have stunning that happens with lightning. We already have some freezing capabilities with frost. So it's really oh, our production man says plasma. That's going to be an interesting one. That's kind of towards the I feel like that would be towards the lava style of things, where you just like melt terrain or something.
You like donating your plasma and they turn it into a gauntlet.
Oh, not that. That's gross, man. That's gross.
Kind of plasma.
Oh boy. You know what? That's enough feeding me ideas from the production guy. We're just gonna roll with it here. So we are just still looking for this lobby, guys. It won't be too much longer. Game number 8 is on the way. Sorry for the technical difficulties, but again, just a few more minutes, we'll be right in for you.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, just for the sake of talking more about conceptualizing, and because, okay, listen, we can come up with concepts and it's fun, but this is like what Proletariat like has to do. And I find it like, I found when I was writing the Arcane class, and I actually do have another class concept that's done. I just need to touch up a couple things and work with my artist friend to actually turn it into like a video and like put it out as a concept, or like write it up as a Reddit post or something. But I have found that making a concept for a class was way easier than making talents. Like, I think I've made like 6 talents. The first 3 I made, I completely forgot to do scroll scalings. And the next 3 I made, it was just hard. Like, the difficulty of adding to this game is like understanding how power creep works and like not wanting to just add damage. Like, that was the hardest thing for me. And I'm just making like content on the side, right? Like, I'm not like actually considering putting it in. So I got to a point where I was like, dude, this is just complicated not to just stack damage on top of damage. Like, so like my interaction with Arcane was like, I made the Arcane Gauntlet idea, and I was like, you know what? Like, not every element has an interaction with each other. You know what I mean? Like, lightning and fire in this game don't really do anything really. So when I made like the Arcane Gauntlet, I was like, dude, I'm not making Arcane and fire interact with each other, because what could that even mean? It just means more damage. That's all it means. So I was like, I'm just not going to do it. So they have to consider things like that. They have to find an interesting way to add to the game without being ridiculous. And it's the same thing with talents. Like, can you even like, I'll put you on the spot. Can you even think of a talent right now? Like, could you like, I mean, what would you
like, just conceptualizing one?
Yeah. Like, where would you go? Like, what would your goal be? And because then you have to think about that talent. When you're making a talent, you have to think about it in terms of its own cost, its own strength. You have to build out the scalings for it. Then you have to decide what tree it belongs in. And you have to weigh all of that against the different classes and think to yourself, like, is this one thing that I'm adding, that I've built in, that I've placed into a specific tree, like, not break a class, like not a single class?
I mean, I can think of one, but it would probably break Frostborn, because what I can think of off the top of my head is maybe if you just stand still for a while, you start like building damage resistance. So like at one scroll, you stand still for 2 seconds, you build 25% damage reduction, and it scales up to like 50 or something. But then if you couple it with something like Frostborn, you have a mega tank, you can use Tundra. And then once you're level 4, you can charge your Ice Prism and just stand there, decrease your damage by 50%, and then increase your outgoing damage by 35 with the Ice Prism. So it's just stuff like that. Like, it would interact very, very weirdly, especially in a game that's designed around movement, I would think.
Again, we have a little bit of time while we're looking for lobby, so I'll bring it up. You didn't happen to catch my conversation that I had with Proletariat Andrew, because I did like a community night with them, and we played a bunch of Clash games or whatever. And
I don't think I did.
Yeah, there was someone in the chat asked me, they were like, hey, they asked him to ask me if Crashy could make one rune, what would it be? And I've never thought about making a rune. I mean, although that's good content to add to the game, I was trying, like, whenever I'm conceptualizing something, I want to be realistic and I also want to be unique, because if I just add, dude, I could add a short form mobility rune, right? Some kind of a skip or something.
You could add another dash or spring step or something.
That's easy. But how do you add content to the game that's somewhat viable at the same time is unique? And so I did something really, it took me a few minutes whenever he asked me, but I did something unique. And I thought about, and this is really fun, what if we had element-based runes? And the one that I came up with was ice block. This is not a different concept for games that have ice in it, right? Like a lot of my ideas, especially because there's so much diversity in the kits, it's like Warcraft themed. So it's like, what if we had a rune that was ice block? And what you do is it locks you down, right? It freezes you in place and you're immune to damage either until you remove it from yourself or it gets broken. So like, I mean, there's so much room for things like that. And then the other question is like, because this is a question that I haven't answered because I haven't thought too much on it, is like, does a rune like that interact more if you're a Frostborn, or is it just like stable that everybody uses? Like, so there's like, that's just me like trying to be ridiculous and come up with crazy ideas and stuff.
Yeah, that's fair. It's fair to go ahead and kind of see if that's going to go ahead and interact with elements in a different way. That's actually a really cool concept that you can think of, like kind of like how Firefly is like the miniature flight of the Pyromancer class. Maybe in the future, if you have fire and you're rocking just the regular flight, maybe it like extends your duration. Maybe it leaves like a fire trail behind you or something. Or maybe if you're a toxicologist, as much as people would hate this, maybe it leaves toxic puddles below you as you, like a dive bomber, as you fly above them.
Oh gosh, I mean,
that would be like, so annoying, but it would also be kind of funny.
This is the fun thing about like trying to come up with ideas, is that like there's so much room to being unique, and then when you think about it, you're like, okay, that's busted. Like I can't do that.
Yeah, like imagine Stone Shape where you're just flying and behind you just drops miniature boulders for like 10 damage each or something. You just fly in circles around one person. That would be so annoying. But
flight rune meta for some other purpose other than trying to stay alive so long. Like
we can actually have offensive flight runes. That would be great.
No, I don't know. I think I think the fun thing about this game is that there's a kind of formula in place. You kind of feel where things are at. Like classes, they have a really specific thing that they fill and they do. You can see it. Like, okay, they can move, they have mobility, maybe they have armor built in, whatever the case may be. And then runes are like, all right, cool. Most of them are movement, some of them are a slight bit utility. And then when you take that formula and you kind of shift it around a little bit and you start adding things that don't really fit inside that formula, that's when things get really interesting. So like Vigor, Ambi, and Foresight, that's the first time they really took that formula and they tilted it a little bit, right? You know, like they took the talents that we expected to be in a certain place and they threw them somewhere else just because they could. And that's what I think is going to really add a lot of uniqueness to this game, because they could take something that you would expect to be a rune or like something that you wouldn't expect to be a rune and then turn it into that. And then that's whenever it's like, okay, this opens the door because maybe it looks good on paper, on its own, but it works really, really well with Frostborn. And so, I don't know, stuff like that. Like Shadow Step working really, really well with Toxicologists, for example. I don't know.
Yeah. And guys, just to give you a quick update, I know it's been a while since we've been in the game, but we are having some more technical difficulties, if I can speak English today. We will be getting into Game 8 here very soon, probably in the next few minutes. So promise, it's around the corner. It is. But we'll just have to sit tight for just a little bit. Going back to your point, though, of all these different runes that could really shift everything and the talents the way they did, I think some people are upset at the whole fervor thing being swapped off to 3 costs, ruining their favorite little builds that you can see. And I'm actually really interested as to how increasing the cost can really affect these different builds. I don't know if it's the right way to go. I don't know if it's the wrong way to go, but it is still just as strong as it used to be. Now it just doesn't fit as well. So maybe we'll have to they'll have to think about that. And also, like, if they just want to change values but not change the cost, that's another thing they need to look at too. But in terms of I'm just trying to think here. In terms of like a rune that I would make to really change things up, like that's a really hard one. You make a good point with the whole ice block thing. You just sit tight and you just are completely immune to damage. It's very, very interesting. Definitely a use in squads, I would say. Solos maybe not so much unless you're getting third partied. Maybe that's something.
You see it just like I see it, and I love that because if you didn't say that, I was going to jump in and say like, oh well, yeah, that rune's not a mobility rune. But if you're like the team's tank, you jump in, pull all this aggro, and then you block yourself in, and guess what? You've bought your team 2 seconds to close the gap and get to you. And that's why I want to see really unique things. And I think I even said something like, when the ice block is canceled or broken, it creates like a slowing field, almost like a flash freeze, but maybe like have to be like less potent, right? Or
you have to be like really close on them or something.
Yeah, something like so. There's so much room to create. I'm trying to think of a word. Like the thing about this game, the marvel of this game, the kind of spectacle of the game is like power and magic, and there's so much room to experiment. And I think that's equal parts like awesome and like equal parts like scary as hell. Cause like, they could add one thing that seems and
I can think of a broken one actually.
Oh god,
I can think of a broken one. All right, so let's say you're running runic fluency. Okay, this is going to make it especially obnoxious. Maybe you're running conduit as well. What if you just make a rune to where it starts a charge for about 1.5 seconds, okay? But at the end of that charge, it'll make yourself explode for 30 damage, let's say, or something like really, really small that can add onto that can just add on to whatever damage you're already doing. You don't get to move, you don't get to dodge spells, but if you're playing really, really up close personal,
bless you.
If you're playing really, really up close and personal. And maybe if you're like really focusing someone down, maybe even if you activate your Tundra or your Flash Freeze and you get to freeze them, you can just charge up a rune. It'll deal 30 damage on top of the frost that you're about to shoot into their skull or something like that. So it can just be really, really stupid, but also offers you no movement. And there's very specific scenarios where you can use it, but it's also really good at the same time. So I kind of have to think of it that way.
I love that you brought that up because I think that we're talking, it comes back to that concept of there being like a formula in place. And I don't know if there's I would have to look it up to see like if Proletariat has it like listed somewhere, but like, what does the game say about runes? Does it say like it's meant for utility and mobility? I don't know. I don't even know if the game.
There's a lot of things actually.
So
it's like primarily, I feel like it's primarily utility, but a lot of them are also movement, or maybe it's vice versa. Like so there's typically a lot of movement.
So I feel like that's like our way of defining the formula, right? Like runes are utility and mobility. So what happens when, patch 2.0, we're dropping our first damage rune, like kind of like what you were bringing up, and
you just have to make everybody that uses it really, really slow for it to work. I feel like.
Well, not even necessarily slow, but the fact that the trade-off is this: like when you're running Wolf's Blood, the trade-off is that you're just stuck to the ground. The same thing with Invis, like you don't really get anything out of it except for whatever it gives you. So when you run a damage rune. Like the cool thing about running a damage, this is just the one that comes to mind. This is my crazy brain that just goes on these weird tangents at random times. Like, what if there was a rune and the whole point of the rune was like you look at an enemy and you mirror their sorcery and it gives you like, so you click, like you look at them, you click your rune and your rune gets replaced by whatever their class is. It gives you their sorcery and it gives you 2 charges.
Oh my. That's interesting. What if you're well, I could see it like if you're up against a toxicologist and you're a pyromancer, maybe you steal their toxic cloud. That way you can get a little bit of AoE while having a frost offhand, maybe. I feel like you would almost have to incorporate the class skills that it has available at the same time, or it's just going to be a singular use. Because like I can see you replacing a sorcery with Flash Freeze, for example. But if you're like playing up close and personal and trying to get a big AoE with your fire main hand and your toxic offhand, then when are you really going to use Flash Freeze unless it's to negate damage with Tundra? Like stuff like that. I don't know if you would incorporate all the skills with it, but maybe you would. I don't know.
I don't know. I was just thinking like let's imagine I'm running like I don't know, some version of Pyromancer or something. Like maybe I'm running like Pyro Frost and I have this rune and I steal like a toxicologist cloud and then I have like a couple dragonfires I can randomly throw out. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It again, I'm spitballing. This could be the stupidest idea or it could be like a super cool idea, but it's more so just the fact that like I think my goal is that like Spellbreak has this really fun, cool formula that is just begging to be played with. You know what I mean? And that's cool to me. I like stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. And someone in the chat's making a good point here. We're kind of like thinking of ideas, but they're also copies from other games. So like that rune we were just talking about, it's a lot like Silas from League of Legends.
Hey, I have no idea what that champion is, so I don't know.
Well, that's fine. That's fine. That opens. Hey, it's a big can of worms that it opens up, and it's actually a really good can of worms. I like it a lot. But anyway, we're getting into game number 8 at long last. Look at us over here, finally in one, and we're seeing a lot of early action from Puffy Penguin, Roaming Gnome, Ramaraparu, holy moly, and TV Roaming Gnome. I forgot that was a name, but Ramaraparu is actually already down due to TTV Roaming Gnome, and Sputnik already getting You Are My Clarity. Schno in what looks like the Westmar region. Just looking to, no, this is Lowland actually, looking to kind of kite away from this other team getting into all their business right here.
Yeah, Schno is looking for some of the information, something that he might know, as he's got this Tempest player. Actually surprised to see a Tempest player. Not sure if this is someone that's actually, you know, like going to be in the event. Someone that's, oh my goodness, Bondran and Yadano going to be getting some quick disruptions. So now the last player left alive is going to be Towel, trying to make something happen. He finds a disruption for himself, but he's going to be very low, and this might be an unfortunate situation for Snow and his team here. But yes, it is. That's going to be Bondran and picking up a couple of exiles there. So unfortunate.
Yeah, and that's quite a random team to run into. Bondran, I know he's a menace in these games out here, especially in public lobbies, and he tends to do pretty well in competitive lobbies as well. So definitely someone to look out for who's not a part of our tournament but can still make a big uproar in this particular game of Game 8. Unfortunately, Tal just not finding all the resources he needs to go ahead and seal anything out, but he did end up getting a nice disruption on the gotcha there, so at least he got something for his troubles there. And now we see KDA getting into a bit of an engagement there, wanting to kite away though. They don't really have the best of resources. You can see 2 of their teammates have white belts and the 20 armor. While it is nice to go ahead and be able to use those armor shards, it's not really going to be worth much if you can't charge it up to say at least 60 or so. So they'll have to kind of kite away. Misses a shot on the frost right there. Rocking the Pyromancer, not exactly his strongest suit, so they'll need to just kite away, reposition, get a higher ground, and really they're just looking for belts for Cozy and Speary. There's Speary on the Epic, now Cozy just needs something better.
Yeah, and this actually might be a nice, interesting position to turn the fight, right? Like now that you have another belt that's kind of like, you know, like conducive of a potential fight win. Look at that, Hermias Mora finds a couple of kills in the kill feed right there. But, you know, this could be a really interesting situation where you have this mentality from the enemy team that's pursuing you that thinks like, hey, look, these guys are back against the wall. They don't want to fight us. And the next thing you know, you spin that fight around and kind of on its head and really take the advantage. That said, KDA does take a pretty big hit there as he's in full disengage. His team, they want to leave. But I don't know if that's even an option. At some point, I've actually talked about this as well. In Battle Royales, when a team is pushing you, at some point, they're either going to full send on you, and you have to make the decision to match their aggression and take the fight. So we're going to see what happens. I'm personally going to predict right now that this fight doesn't just disappear, but as I say that, he spins around and there's nobody there. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Oh, it looks like they might be re-engaging in a long-range form. All they really want to do is just find Cozy a better belt. I think that's really all they're waiting on. Maybe they're wanting to play safe and go towards the later part of the game and not really engage all that much. It's either finding Cozy a belt or it's delaying until the late game. It's one of those two things. I can't really imagine anything else at this point. Maybe they're delaying until Speary gets his level 3 with Power Surge, but that doesn't really make sense either. And also Cozy for the outbreak, so maybe that does make a little bit of sense. I'm not really sure what they're delaying for. It has to be the belt situation. I can't think of that. That has to be the best reason in my mind. What do you think, Crashy?
I mean, I think I agree with you to some extent. The worst part about this, and this is just maybe an unfortunate side effect, is that you can look at it right now, right above his inventory. KDA doesn't have a single scroll. And when you're constantly traversing the map, you don't ever like stand and deliver, like take a stand against a team that's pushing you. You're just snuffing out the ability to like find any actual loot for yourselves. And the further you go in the game, the more and more risky it becomes to take an isolated 3v3 fight against another team for fear of third party. But that said, that's what we're going to see here right now with Mike Wazowski, Dirty Mike, and the boys essentially taking this fight here on the edge. And you see a little bit of damage coming over towards the side of Mike Wazowski, but that full reset from him, as now it looks like he's getting on the offensive. That toxicologist class, he wants to get inside the action. You see King Ryzen is going to be teleporting into the action as well on that Stone Shaper, and they're in full pursuit. They might be able to find a disruption here, some kind of an exile, get themselves some more points on the board. They're looking to close that gap.
Yeah, and this has to be the best scenario for Mike Wazowski. This kind of environment is exactly what you want to look for if you're a toxicologist, and for that matter, a pyromancer as well. If you can kind of dip in and out of these windows and really just find your opportunity to go ahead and zap them out, just like BNAG did there, then you're going to be just fine. Especially as a toxicologist, you have all these opportunities to sneak in an outbreak, and that's really what you want to do. You can dart in and out just fine. Now we see Mike Wazowski laying down the fire towards this outer tower. It looks like his opponent's doing a very good job of hiding. He wants to prevent that res as much as possible, and I think he's going to do a good job of it here. He has the stun available. He has an extra toxic cloud. It's just a matter of time before he lands something. It looks like he's opting to play it safe, though. He sees the third party coming in, doesn't want to deal with it, not looking to activate the mana vault just yet for some additional pressure. And now look at this, just a free roaming on that lightning, and Pet Nervo is going to go ahead and get exiled himself. Now we have an opportunity to reset, and Mike will be right around the corner for another engagement right now.
Yeah, and you do see Rush Frog in the kill feed as well. Unfortunately, looks like BNAG did take a lot of damage. He got disrupted, but look at that. Just as I speak on it, King Ryzen finds that res, that pickup, whatever the case may be. They're getting that reset going, getting healthy, getting shielded up, and then they'll be back in the action for more fights. Mike Wazowski just utilizing that inventory slots. He's not going to let those potions go to waste. He sees an opening, picks them up. Definitely want to be min-maxing as much as possible. The lightning strike coming down, so they do have an enemy presumably in this area. You can see Mike Wazowski. I feel like this man's just going crazy trying to find him, and there it is. It looks like Mike Wazowski and BNAG able to pick up that last one, as Pet Nervo actually gets a kill in the kill feed as well for himself. So 22 players left alive in this one. We do know that Haunt is going to be alive as well. Rush Frog getting himself a couple of exiles in the kill feed, so we'll have to see as this one progressing. Now on board with Haunt, coming out of this Ruby area, and you know, they're kind of chilling. They're actually, it looks like more so than anything, it looks like they're kind of looking for enemies. They're not heading toward the zone. You can actually see them heading kind of like north through the map. They're hunting for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I would imagine that they're thinking people are going to be towards the Stone Tooth Mountain area where there's a lot of loot density. But it looks like all the action is just going to stay with Dirty Mike and the boys over here over at Wayfarer's Crossing, as BNAG is just looking to sort of rotate around, get any sort of lightning damage as he can. There's the Featherfall out, a little bit of PTSD for your troubles on the Featherfall lightning users. And now it looks like he's getting bursted a little bit, lays down the flash freeze for any sort of CC. And nothing really doing here. He is running the full long-range build with Frost and Lightning, so we'll have to see how that works out for him. His teammates will definitely have to rotate in and get the rest of that damage for him. Needs to play very, very safe right here. If he gets too close, that'll definitely spell the end of him. Already down with all the shields here, he will need to get back and sort of reset if he can. This Featherfall is really leaving him open. Just like that, KDA is going to get a beautiful snipe onto him. That's exactly what I was worried about for him. And he'll just have to kite all the way back to his teammates who are having a rough time of it themselves.
Wow, and as you say that, been watching the kill feed, I have seen Solar Bear get 2 disruptions now, I believe, on the side of Haunt. Now Death finding one of his own onto Steel Mets. This could be a big turning point if they're able to finish up that fight. King Ryzen finding another onto Red Hits, as we are jumping over to that last player left standing. It's going to be Death. He finds a big Ice Lance. Is he going to be able to land the second? Not going to connect with that one. Gets a lot of damage coming his way. He's the last member standing, only has about 20 HP, is tanking a bit of the storm in this game, regardless of how you look at it, is all but finished over on the side of Haunt. Again, they don't necessarily need this performance, but this could be a huge one coming out from the side of Troll Equity.
Yeah, it looks like this will definitely be one of the games that they dump. Again, best 6 out of 8 is what we're taking here, and that's definitely not one of their best 6. So they'll go out pretty early. Nothing really wrong with that, honestly. I mean, it was bound to happen at some point, and they are just finishing out so well anyway between all the other games that they've had today. They've won first place except for like 3 games at this point, so I think they'll be just fine. But let's talk about Troll Equity here. They're doing a great job of staying in the conversation, and they actually get a clean, just that clean 1v1 as far as the squad versus squad goes. Just absolutely doing so well against them. And I think that they were live with two teammates remaining. So that's really efficient on their part. So great job to them. And now we see KDA trying to land more of their awesome snipes. We already seen one earlier, and there's another one there. A stun into the snipe. That was so well coordinated. You have Speary on the stun there, and then the quick follow-up from KDA on the snipe while he can't move. That was absolutely disgusting. As now we're going into the late game. KDA has 1 exile and his teammates a few more, I'm sure.
1 exile, but no scrolls, unfortunately for him. So, it's not, I don't think that there's like a 1-to-1 correlation between having scrolls and being able to win a game. Like, I'm sure at some point in Spellbreak history, we'll see a game where someone wins with no scrolls. I'm sure that'll happen, right? Maybe, probably not. But my point being is that it's all about building your trajectory for a win and increasing your percentage chance and probability to win, and that's not what they've been able to do, unfortunately. So now we see Troll Equity, and this could be a big game for them, just simply due to the fact that they eliminated Haunt and they have more free reign to earn more points. So you never know. This could be a big performance for them, definitely something that could score and put them up a little bit higher, give them a little bit of peace of mind as they are going to be taking this fight over here at Wayfarer's Crossing. You see a lot of damage coming out from Steel Nets. He's going to be looking to get a little bit on the offensive here. He's actually rocking that Harmony talent.
Oh, no.
So that, but yeah, lots of damage coming out. That's Yadano onto Hermias Mora is going to be finding that first disruption. The second coming out as well. That's going to be the last one left alive. And it's Solar Bear TTB. Is he going to be able to make something happen? That is the question.
Dude, I don't know. It was getting bursted down very, very heavily in the early part of that engagement. So now with a 2v1 to deal with, actually Speary goes ahead and gets Bondrin down, but he might have actually gotten back up. I can't really tell at this point, but Solar Bear definitely has his work cut out for him right here, as he will have to go ahead and reposition, get out of this engagement. We see KDA already on the Frost getting into this engagement here. This has to be our random squad of Bondrin and Yadano. Getting right into it here, as he needs to go ahead and just reposition here. He is kind of in the thick of it here with the Pyromancer class, which is to his advantage, but where he really shines is all these snipes that he can put out. And I think if he does that, actually, you know what? Yadano going to go ahead and take the rest of it there, and KDA sealing out the exile onto Solar Bear. And this might be an opportunity for them to take the whole thing if he can play it well. KDA, unfortunately, getting his Frost eaten up there, and he needs to reposition to get that Pyromancer working. This is a 3v2 situation. It is Bondrin and Yadano. Actually, no. Speary got Yadano and Bondrin, so this is a completely different squad. I wonder who it is.
Oh, Zanrin is going to go down. The last member left alive is going to be one other solo. So Zanrin going to find himself that 3rd place position. And again, this is a full-on 3-player pursuit. The last man standing. The game in Canada is going to go down, finding himself that 2nd place. And hey, that's Qualifier too.
Hey. Yeah, and that's a 2nd place placement from Gaming Canada. So great job to him to finish out as well as he could. And we are finally, at long last, technical difficulties in hand in all 8 games, we are finished with Element Fusion Qualifier number 2. Crashy, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on here, and it's been an absolute pleasure seeing all these squads performing the way that they did. Of course, we'll have to get to our final standings here very soon with all the stats in tow. We'll get to that in just a second, but Crashy, tell me something about what you saw today. What did we see today different from yesterday that all these squads did especially well?
Oh man, I think I don't know. I feel like we saw a lot of fighting coming out from Haunt that felt just so very practiced, right? Like, and that's fair.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. But it's just the sheer execution coming out from a team that's that consistent. But I'm also I'm not gonna lie, I'm very impressed by the although it's not at that highest level, I'm very impressed by the consistency that we're seeing out of a couple of other teams as well. And that's that story that I was telling about, like, hey, you take this experience and you put it back into your practice. You recycle the knowledge that you've got, that you gained, and you put it back into where you're looking to improve, and how you can fix your communication or what you can learn from other teams. And that's going to be where you really begin to see a lot of improvement.
Yeah, definitely. They did an absolutely amazing job with their communications. It's going to be great one day when we can listen in on all their communications. And of course, you could see just the wheels turning while they were in the middle of their fights. They definitely had a solid frontliner, a solid disruptor, and then a solid backliner. And that's really what you want to look for. You want to look for those defined roles. Even though Spellbreak itself might not have those, they still work very well. You have Rush Frog playing the front line with Pyromancer, really baiting everyone to kind of sink in and aggro onto him. And then while he's doing that and trying to reset, Death can sort of just get on the outside of the action, get behind the enemy line, and blow up the backliner with some outbreaks. And then all the while that's going on, Cloud is sitting in between those two and sort of laying down all the CC that he can, along with the residual damage from Conduit. So that was just textbook performance from that team there. And I don't think we're going to be surprised going into these final results with all the standings that we currently have. Now, some of these new teams that we saw out here, some names I don't even know yet, really, they did some amazing work. Troll Equity keeping the consistency up, finishing, and usually second place is where I'm seeing them at. But even when they were down in the early game, they still have a man playing as best as they can to finish out either in the second or third placement. So excellent job to them. And of course, we can't get out of here without talking about the Heathens, who did an amazing job, especially KDA with those snipes, and Speary with all the different builds that he's coming out here with, laying down some decent XLs as well.
Yeah, one thing I gotta say, because I feel like I've been putting a lot of focus on like Haunt, Dirty Mike, Troll Equity, and rightfully so. But I'm gonna go out on a limb and get a little bit castery bias, I suppose. The Heathens are very interesting to me. I mean, I know Cozy and Speary, like I said, I don't know much about KDA, but the fact that they did very well in this event, and we're going to see that reflected in the standings here in just a bit, but I see so much potential in them. Like, I really, really do. Like, me coming just like from my caster perspective, I'm looking at the way they play, and I feel like there's something missing. They don't have it fully dialed in, but I like see the potential out of them. And I'm really looking forward to seeing that roster continue week after week, scrim after scrim, to continue to get better, because we see a lot of work coming out from not only one of those teammates like KDA, Cozy, and Spree, but all three of them. And also and this is totally besides that point, I'm very pleased with watching competitive Spellbreak post patch 1.2 entirely to see the diversity. Like, I'm seeing so much more build diversity. I'm seeing different team compositions. I'm just that gives me so much fuel, man. I like it a lot. It's really, really fun to watch.
Yeah, it's almost as if all these different builds that you see in Spellbreak, it's like they're assigning their own roles. Like, we don't have a defined, like I mentioned, support, tank, DPS. We don't have that. We have talents, and that you can really, there's a lot of leeway there to kind of define your play style the way you want to. But enough of that. We've been talking about that all day, especially during the delays. We do have the final scores all ready for you. Let's get that top 5 on screen right here so you can see the results of this qualifier number 2, and you're going to see surprising. We have Haunt in first place, taking it just shy of 2,900 points, along with Heathens, Dirty Mike, Troll Equity, and 50 gold in that order. Look at how close those scores are for second to fourth.
I was going to say, and now you can see why I had to give that shout out, because I already knew it was coming. The Heathens, they flew up pretty quickly. I mean, I'm going to say it again. I was very, very impressed to see. And yeah, I mean, we're looking at a 30-point difference between second and fourth place. I mean, that's a pretty impressive performance from the top 3 teams just below Haunt. I mean, Haunt, obviously, they're dominating in fashion. It's the way that they do it. They're a very veteran team, very solid team. But the performance coming out from Heathens, Dirty Mike, and Troll Equity, I'm very, very impressed. I think all 3 of those teams have a lot of life, a lot to give, a lot of improvement that they can make on top of some of that consistency that we're already starting to see. And a huge shout out to 50 gold, making themselves in that 5th place position as well.
Yeah, now let's talk about second through fourth here. Obviously, we're going to be looking at the first place placement of all these different teams that we have coming out for all the different qualifiers to make it into the finals. Haunt taking the clear lead here. But as we start looking because we have 8 qualifiers, I would imagine that the top 8 people from all those qualifiers are going to make it. We're looking at the 2 remaining. Some of these placements that we're seeing from Heathens and Troll Equity, they are so close together. And I can tell you that 2nd through 4th definitely beat out the 2nd place placement from qualifier number 1. So we might be looking at this list here in the future to sort of pick who we're going to include in that finals. So definitely something to look out for here in the future as we go through these qualifiers to see who is going to rise to the occasion. And now we'll get into some more stats. We're going to see who did the best in every category. And you can see here on the totals, you can see the highlighted areas are the best in every category. And Crashy, I'll let you take it away with that one.
Yeah, I mean, what more do you expect? We have pretty much all the max totals going to be coming out from Haunt, as they were just very, very dominant on the day. We had a couple performances that I mean, I'd be actually very curious just to find out specifically if they were even scored coming out from the side of Haunt. They had like one game that like wasn't great. So, I mean, very, very dominant performance coming out from Haunt. And yeah, I mean, pretty solid. They actually even tied with what am I looking at here? The total points for single game highest elims, they actually tied over with Dirty Mike at 14. So pretty cool there. And what was production telling me just now? What did I miss?
Oh, he's talking about Solar Bear here with total exiles for the event. Solar Bear finishing with 25, actually matching those of Death and the average exiles per game. So that's something to keep note as well. I could tell you from experience by finding him in game, he's definitely one of the better players out there in the community, and the stats are showing it here. They do not lie, especially against some of the best teams here that we have to offer in an Element competitive Spellbreak. I mean, that's very impressive coming out of today.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think we had a really solid event. Like, we had some really, really scrappy games. There was that one game that I'll make note again where I swear it was so early on, and I made like a point about how there was only 32 players left. And then the next thing I know, we literally cut down to 17 players. So lots of action today, a lot of fighting. So we got some more info for you guys on the day. And it's I don't know, man. It's really been a really good one. I'm gonna be straight up. I'm dumb. I don't even know what I'm looking at right now. So what do you see here? Okay, break this down for me. It's
basically just another way to look at these stats. We have all the different colors. We have the shapes. We have the markings. It's everywhere. Anything you could ask for, it's here. You have in your first category here. We have total team damage. Look at all those colors. Now we have total team exiles. Look at all those colors again in a different 2D orientation. And I know I'm being facetious here, but this is just a different breakdown of how all the different teams did. You can see in total team exiles with 66 going to Haunt, that's 25% of all the exiles in the event today going their way. And of course, we have player total damage in your middle category, breaking down each player's exiles and damage all the way through the different events. You can see Solar Bear and them matching up quite well. So with that being said, guys, that is going to conclude our second qualifier for the Element Fusion Tournament. Really glad y'all came out. Again, if you feel so inclined, all donations, 70% go towards all the prize pools that you see here, 1740 including for this event, sponsored by Proletariat. Thank you guys so much for supporting us in that way. And of course, 30% will go towards the increased production value, and also giving us a little bit of cheddar for all of our troubles here. But anyway, that's going to do it for today's stream. We are going to go ahead and raid Mana Class here in the community. One of our fellow casters, holding down the Spellbreak community here. He is a former Overwatch player trying to dip his toes into this community. But anyway, Crashy, anything you'd like to end on, my good friend?
Cheers to everybody from production, admins, viewers, players. I always enjoy it, man. This is fun to me. I have a good amount of time, like a good time with it. So yeah, shout out to everybody from you guys watching at home, just hanging out with us, adding to the experience of the Spellbreak community, especially the competitive Spellbreak community. And I just enjoy it, man. Can't appreciate you guys enough. And yeah. So what are you thinking, OSK?
Man, I'm thinking it's about time to send us off here. Do not forget, tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern, we do have solo scrims that will be streamed right here. So if you think you are good enough to go ahead and jump in with all these players in a solo environment, no team to rely on, it's all you all the time, you'd be right here, 6 p.m. Easterns when the stream starts, and a little bit earlier is when we'll get you into that scrim lobby. And guys, thanks again for joining in. Y'all been great. Crashy, you've been great, my friend. And we'll go ahead and send it off to Mana Class. Y'all have a good night. We'll see you back here tomorrow.